All right, here we go. Adam22. Welcome back to VladTV.
Hello, Vlad. How you doing? Nice to see you, man.
I'm good. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the BBC in the room.
King Dingaling. Yeah.
Since our last interview, your wife, who you recently married, has done a scene with male adult film star Jason Love.
Not Jason Lee.
Not Jason Lee. Jason Love.
That would be very different, yeah.
Yeah, that would be different. That would bring a whole new dimension to the story. Yeah. Okay, so leading up to this, you co-signed this whole situation. It's not like she just went off on her own and decided to do this scene.
I helped her brainstorm this ingenious plan.
You guys put this plan together. So what led up to you being okay with this? Because you and I have had conversations about this before. We've talked about you doing scenes with her and how you might be okay with a guy, but it's never happened and so forth. So this was very much a left turn from our previous conversations.
But it's interesting you say that, because there was a clip of me on Andrew Schultz's podcast, Flagrant, where he asked me, would you ever do a scene with her and another guy? And I said no. But on your podcast, as well as on Academics, I had been asked the same question by you guys, and I had been a lot less, I hadn't necessarily closed the door on it. I was kind of like, maybe, potentially, it could happen. I could see it, But yeah, so it really like started to get conceptualized because me and her were kind of having a conversation one day about if we would ever swing on camera, which swinging, for people who don't know, would probably be me and her plus another couple, a guy and a girl, and then we switch. And so we would be having sex with each other's partners on camera. We talked about that at one point, and we decided that we thought that it was a pretty decent idea. And I kind of like wrapped my head around it in the sense of like, you know what? I think that I have reached the level of emotional maturity that I could see another guy's dick going into you, and I wouldn't be permanently scarred by it. Since, the average guy, when you think about your wife or your girlfriend having sex with another dude, it creates, a level of revulsion, I would assume, for the average guy. It's not something that you want to think about. But I decided that, having been in the porn game for this long, that I was ready for us to take that step where she would be working with another guy. We're still going to do that swinging stuff, but I think that we decided that the thing that would probably garner the most attention would be her just doing a one-on-one scene with another guy. So yeah, I signed off on it. We had the conversation maybe a couple months before the wedding. Then we come home.
Oh, you guys talked about this before the wedding?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
We've been talking about it for a few months. And then we get married, we come back. We were maybe home from the honeymoon for like a month, and she ended up doing it. It was a Sunday. I was playing poker tournaments in the back house at my house, which is kind of my happy place. Like whenever I get a chance to play poker tournaments, I'm always a very happy boy. And, she left the house at maybe 2 p.m. She might have been back by 7 p.m., including the drive, the makeup, the hair, the whatever. And they ended up filming together for, I think, 40 minutes in total. And the scene came out and it rocked the world.
Right. Well, I watched the scene for quote unquote research purposes.
Understandable.
Yep.
I'd be mad if you didn't.
You'd be mad if I did.
Right. No, I'd be indifferent if you didn't. But,
right.
Yeah.
Is it weird sometimes knowing that like your friends have seen your scenes, or at this point does it not matter?
Nah, because it's like I do porn. It's like the idea is for a lot of people to see it, and sometimes it is weird to realize just who has seen it. But no, ultimately it's like they're supposed to see it, right? Like even yesterday we did this live stream orgy thing, and I'm, thinking there's probably a lot larger percentage of No Jumper fans who are watching it because we're live streaming it. Like, and I mean, if anything, I was hyped on the idea that they're getting to witness me having a good time on camera, just like this. We're having a good time on camera,
right? In a different way.
It's a little less intense, but yeah,
a lot less intense. Okay, so I watched the scene. So the scene was already announced, and it got released. It was all over like all the free porn sites and everything else like that I occasionally frolic in. And okay, so the scene starts. She had already done the announcement, which kind of ended up getting memed. The whole thing of her like sitting there kind of bent over, and then he kind of walking up behind her.
Still to this day, that is
someone
going
photoshopped
crazy.
it. There's now like people taking Jason Love's place and walking in and, pretending to be
It's like
them.
a TikTok template now, so you can make one very, very
Oh, you
easily.
could actually, it's a TikTok
it's
template.
like it's already there for
Wow.
you. You just have
Okay.
to film behind it. Yeah.
Watching the video, the one thing that really shocked me a little bit was the cream pie. As someone who's watched porn most of his life, clearly that's not the usual way a porn scene goes. Usually there's a cum shot, right? And I would think in this particular situation, she's married, she has a kid, there would be a pullout.
Right.
But instead, there was a cream pie. Going into the scene, did you and her have a conversation about that part?
No, that was a little bit of a surprise.
So you were surprised?
I was surprised. Sometimes things happen on the porn set that are out of the performer's control. And it was just decided that day that there wasn't going to be the usual pop shot and that they had to complete the scene in that way.
Okay. Were you a little upset?
I was a little bit surprised for sure, but once I wrapped my head around it, no, I wasn't too upset. It's like, if anything, the average porn scene that I watch has a lot of stuff going on that her scene didn't have. There's a lot of asshole licking. There's a lot of like grabbing them by the back of the head and aggressively fucking the back of their throat. There's a lot of different things that sometimes happen in different porn scenes. So, a little bit of a cream pie didn't really bother me too much.
A little bit of a cream pie. Okay.
I don't know how much it was, but.
Well, you had mentioned, I think one of your tweets or one of your interviews that if she got pregnant, you would raise the baby as your own.
Yeah, that was me memeing it. Basically, like, the thing that we didn't expect that took place as a result of this whole thing was that it ended up being one of the biggest news stories in the country and I guess the world for the better part of like a month and a half, which I really didn't expect. Like, the other day, somebody in the Reddit, they screenshotted the graph of my like Google Trends results, right? And it only shows the last 5 years, but it's basically like Adam22 barely exists for the entirety of my career, and then I skyrocket into national prominence over the course of the last month or so, and to the point where it reached 100 on the list of Google Trends. So I went from like not really, like, kind of like a niche phenomenon, No Jumper and me, to the point of us becoming like just the talk of the town for a period of time. So that was a little shocking. And I'm feeling it in real life as well. Like, me and my girl went to the beach the other day and it was just, it's a whole new world now. Like, I'm just getting recognized by so many more people that it was kind of astounding. I don't know like what percentage of those people end up necessarily going to No Jumper and watching it or whatever, but it really just took us into a different stratosphere as a result of this news cycle that has surrounded this.
Well,
but as far as me raising the child, I don't know how I got on that.
back to the topic.
That was a joke. Yeah, I did a lot of memeing. Like, I think she announced it on a Tuesday, or I talked about it on the podcast on a Tuesday. And then I think we were at the farmer's market on the following Sunday, so maybe 5 days later or so. And I think I just realized, like, you know what? I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to like really, really lean into this and just have conversations publicly about it and let the world know how I really feel about it, which in that case was like, oh, I've seen it. I'm not horrified by this. I actually enjoyed watching it. And I think that was what really made it go crazy viral at a certain point, was just the fact that I was willing to come out and talk about it and acknowledge that I didn't have a problem with it and everything. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, where I knew that it was going to be, I knew we would talk about it on here. I knew academics would talk about it. I knew our Reddit would go crazy. I knew that it would be a thing in hip hop. I guess I just didn't understand that everyone was going to latch onto it, including, the conservative world, where all of a sudden I have Andrew Tate talking about it with Tucker Carlson and, just like a huge number of people talking about me that probably had never heard about me before.
Yeah, we did this poll that like 90,000 people voted on. The biggest poll I've ever done. And, Lena retweeted, I think you retweeted as well. So the concept in the poll was, if you're a girl that you sleep with 200 women in exchange for her sleeping with one man, would you do it? 85 or 90% of the people, mostly men, I'm sure, said no. And this started this whole, like, all these other porn stars started to chime in. If you see the comments, these like established like porn girls and guys are starting to make comments about how, see, this is what I'm talking about. Women are treated as property and belongings and everything else like that. And listen, when you go outside the country, you go in the Middle East. I was just in Dubai. Like, it's a real thing. Like, women are walking around in the burqas that are literally a little eye slit. You're not going to see her hair. You're not going to see her figure. You're not going to see nothing. And I think most men do feel a sense of ownership with their women. And there's also this interesting concept of body count and stuff like that. Like how many bodies is too much for you to wife a woman? Is 5 too many? Is 10 too many? Is 20 too many? I mean, I remember someone had the best comment that they said, I don't give a shit about how many people my partner slept with. Do they have a clean STD test? Right? You can sleep with one person and have AIDS.
Yeah,
what I'm saying? That's one too many.
Everybody working in the adult industry has a clean STD test, because otherwise they wouldn't be in the adult industry. I get tested every 2 weeks. So does every single girl that I shoot with, which when I think about how often I got tested when I was still a civilian, I was fucking random girls with no condom all the time and getting tested like maybe once a year. So yeah, I mean, the body count thing, I mean, I didn't even consider that. I mean, she's been loyal to me for 7 years. I guess if it was anything, it was really more of a process of me just getting conditioned and becoming numb to the fact that this just wasn't that big a deal. Like, I think me and her over the course of the last 7 years, I'm going to guess that we've had like 250 threesomes, maybe 300.
Woo.
So the idea, and we have porn all over the internet. So the concept of my girl exchanging her time and her body for money on camera is something that I've gotten very, very used to, and I'm not worried about. And it just over time started to seem to me like, well, if I've seen you hook up with 100 different girls and I've seen them give you pleasure on camera, is it really that much more traumatizing or terrible for her to do a scene with another guy? Like, even yesterday, I was in a huge orgy with her, with like 10 other people, and she's the only girl in the orgy that was only hooking up with me as far as dudes go, and then she was hooking up with the other girls as well.
But there are other naked men around.
Yeah, so there's 3 different naked dudes who are fucking the other girls, but they knew, we discussed it beforehand, that Lena is currently, moving slowly in terms of doing content with other guys or whatever. And, at a certain point while I'm doing this and I'm, banging her friend right next to her and I'm licking some other girl's butthole, I'm doing God knows what, I'm kind of thinking in my head, like, would it bother you if your girl just smashed her face down on one of these dudes' dicks and started sucking it in front of you? And I was like, it wouldn't really bother me. Like, at this point, it would just kind of seem like whatever. Like, we're making content, we're having a good time. It just really wouldn't hit the same way for me that I feel like it hits for the average person.
If by some chance Lena did get pregnant by Jason Love,
which is not, it's not possible. She already had her period.
She already had her period. But something, it would have been actually interesting. Let's just say she didn't have her period. And now you have this period of time where you're wondering, whose baby is it? Right? Because you guys are still having sex.
Right.
But you don't know.
Right.
Would she get an abortion? Knowing that it might be yours? Ooh, see?
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
That could get tricky. I mean, she was on the pill at the time.
But pills are not 100%.
This is true. Would she have an abortion? I mean, how late into the pregnancy is it going to take before she could tell whose kid it was?
Can you do a DNA test while someone's pregnant?
Like in the first few months? I honestly don't know.
Let's look this up.
No,
Good question.
No.
Yes, prenatal DNA tests make it possible to confirm paternity as early as 7 weeks into the pregnancy, using a non-invasive method to provide highly accurate results at no risk to your health or the health of your unborn child. So yes, 7 weeks in, you could figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, keep in mind also, I've been fucking my girl for 7 years and never nutted in her when it wasn't intentional. you know, like when we were trying to have kids, and like a few times when she was on her period and we felt safe with it and everything like that. But you know, I have pretty good trigger discipline, so I think if she did get pregnant, we would have known that it was as a result of him. So definitely, we probably would have got rid of it, which would have been a travesty and kind of a weird ending to this whole arc. But
and then we killed the baby afterwards. The end.
no, I'm just saying, like, I'm not. I am pro-choice. I'm not.
I'm pro-choice.
I'm not a pro-lifer,
No,
but
me
I do
neither.
think that abortion is something that should probably occur as infrequently as possible. Like, I definitely don't see myself ever having an abortion with my girl. Like, it's not something I'm looking forward to doing. So I definitely wouldn't be hyped on the idea of it, especially even just having a kid makes me relate to the pro-life side a little bit more, where it does seem like kind of a, you know, just not something that I would want to do, even though I respect other people's decisions if they want to do it, and I do think it should remain legal. But nah, if she did end up pregnant with his kid, I would not. Well, I mean, I guess I honestly would have to fucking do it. We'd probably give it up for adoption or something. Maybe we just give it back to him once we're done, right?
What?
No, but that was never really like a serious.
That's still her baby also. That's
Yeah,
going to
you're
be
right.
your daughter's
Yeah.
half sibling.
And that's why when I said that as a meme in the conversation with FYBJ Main, where I told him that I would raise the kid myself, I was just joking around. At that point, I already knew that it was not a possibility that she was going to get pregnant.
Yeah, crazy. The thing that kind of surprised me a little bit is that you and Jason were kind of going back and forth with each other on social media. I kind of shook my head a little bit. You know, like, okay, this is the dude that just fucked your wife, and now y'all are arguing with each other on social media about who fucked her better. Like, it's, you know, then you made the comment about the, you know, yeah, you know, your dick may be bigger, but, you know, I got something that your mama's cooking has, which is love. And just, I'm watching this going like,
That was right off the top, too. I just thought of that. I don't know.
like,
I don't
what
know
in
where it
the
came from.
absolute fuck is going on here? Like, this is really going into weird directions here.
Yeah, to say the least. Basically, like, he went and did some interviews after they shot the scene, and I think he was getting a bit of blowback and getting some criticism, you know, because obviously this took things to a different level for him career-wise, because he was already well known as a porn star, but you know, when you're a male porn star, there is a relatively limited number of people that are paying attention to you. And so he does this scene, and all of a sudden he's got way more people concerned with him and criticizing his fuck skills. And because
They actually reached out to us for an interview.
Crazy.
Yeah, I told you about this.
He must have got a PR team at a certain point.
We turned it down. Not Jason. No offense to you. We just really don't do porn star interviews. Apart from Adam here.
Yeah. but I you know, I was kind of pissed at him at first, just because like it sort of showed me the complications that could possibly come about from letting my girl do scenes with other guys, which is that then he goes on this interview and he just starts talking a little bit too messy in terms of like being kind of critical of me, or saying that, you know, she clearly enjoyed it more with him or whatever. To me, it's like, this is the kind of thing that apparently now, if she's going to work with any other guys, we have to have a little bit of a pep talk beforehand to be like, hey, if you go on VladTV, you're not allowed to slander the size of my penis or anything like that. You know, I didn't expect myself to be having that conversation with these dudes. But even yesterday when I was doing this big orgy thing or whatever, I was looking at the guys that we were shooting it with, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have to tell any of these guys, if they were to do a scene with Lena, that they should not, you know, offer up criticisms of me as a man on interviews afterwards. So I don't know what got into him that he felt like that was appropriate. But I also kind of, you know, I was a little annoyed by it, but I also realized the viral potential of it right away. And I just kind of pictured myself in my head making a TikTok where I blacklisted him from my wife's vagina. And then I woke up the next day and I did it, and it got 5 million views. And I was like, okay, like that was as funny as you thought it was going to be. Then that's kind of been my whole perspective on this whole thing, is that I was just going to lean into it and have fun with it and just sort of play the role and just make it as funny as possible, because every single viral TikTok is just driving more and more people to the Plug Talk OnlyFans and shit like that, which has been having, you know, the absolute most insane boost that we ever could have asked for.
Right. I think you told me that Lena's scene with Jason Love was the most purchased OnlyFans scene of all time.
I think it was probably the highest earning porn scene of all time, outside of, I don't know, maybe the Kim K tape. that was a different era. I'm assuming that she made many millions of dollars off that. That was during the era of you selling DVDs and stuff. I'm sure that the scene was also the most pirated scene of all time. But yeah, I mean, she made an absolutely absurd amount of money from it, and
It launched her whole career.
Kim
Kardashian.
Yeah.
Kim would not be Kim without that porn tape.
Yeah.
Right? She was Paris Hilton's assistant.
Yeah. Stylist.
Stylist, whatever. Whatever that means. And
right.
now she's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Right? You take the tape away, which her mom co-signed. You know, you see a lot of other interesting dynamics.
A lot of people say that her mom conceptualized that entire plan from the get-go. That, you know, she every step of the way, that sex tape was her mom's idea, that this is how she was going to make her daughter a star.
Oh, yeah, no. I interviewed the owner of Vivid.
Did you?
Yes.
What year was that you did that?
Oh, this was maybe 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
Actually, I can look it up.
I've never seen that one.
Oh, yeah. I did a couple interviews with him, actually.
Okay.
Stephen Hirsch.
Okay.
I did an interview with him in 2014. And what he told me was, this was interesting. He said that they got the tape, right? And of course, they need sign-offs, right? Release forms from everyone involved to commercially put it out. And when they were going through their due diligence, one of the signatures was fake.
Well, let's talk about the Kim Kardashian tape. Talk about the whole story about how you obtained it and what actually happened afterwards.
Well, it was brought to us by a third party. Felt like the proper paperwork that we needed was in place. That came along with it. Now, that ultimately wasn't the case, but we went out there and said, look, we feel comfortable releasing this movie. Ultimately, we were able to have a conversation with Kim after much back and forth and lots of legal stuff going on. But ultimately, she agreed to allow us to put out the tape. We paid her several $1 million. It was an amazing investment for us. And I think it worked out pretty good for her as well. But ultimately, yes, we need to get an agreement.
Me just assuming, knowing how men are and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, okay, so Ray J put a fake Kim Kardashian signature. Only to find out maybe about a year ago when they started going at it online that Ray J's signature was forged.
Wow.
They forged Ray J's signature to try to put out this tape behind his back.
That's grimy.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
No, this is real, because he wouldn't tell me who it was, but he said one of the signatures was fake, so they had to go through this whole process of trying to get the other person to sign off. He wouldn't say who that was,
right,
only for Ray J to say who it was later on.
Wow, insane.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I ran into Ray J during the porn awards. I was just like in Vegas, like going to some restaurant with some friends or something, and I see Ray J, and he just runs up to me. He's like, "What you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just here for the porn awards." He goes, "Oh yeah, I've been nominated a few times." I'm like, "All right, yeah."
Shout out to Ray J.
Ray J, good guy.
Shout out to Ray J, man. The one thing that started to instantly happen as soon as Lena announced the scene, and of course you co-signed it, was that people started calling you a cuckold. Mm-hmm. Now, for those who don't know, a cuckold is a man who likes to watch his woman have sex with other men.
Right.
And in the porn world, if you watch a cuckold porn tape, which I try to avoid, unless there's a girl that I really want to see in the scene, you know what I'm saying? But in general, it's not really my thing. Is usually the dude is like right there in the room, and he's kind of like over by the bed, and you know, I mean, some of it is, you know, could kind of overlap into homosexuality, kind of like the guy might be attracted to the guy who's fucking his woman or whatever else, but you suddenly got labeled as a cuckold. Right. And I just want to say, I blame you for putting this term into the zeitgeist out there, because remember, Elon Musk said Zuck is a cuck.
Yeah.
Which happened right after your situation.
Oh, I didn't
and I'm like, yeah. I'm connecting the dots here.
But I bet if you look at the usage of the word cuck over the last like 10 years, that it was already spiking pretty significantly before my whole thing, because that is a word that I feel like 5 years ago, you almost never heard people use. And then over the past couple years, I've just seen people using it so much more. Like even my friend Destiny, who's a streamer, he has an open relationship with his wife where she can sleep with other men and he can sleep with other women, but they never see it. You know, he's never going to see a video of his wife fucking another man. But people call him a cuck constantly on social media, even though to me, that doesn't even come close to fitting the definition of a cuck. To me, I don't think I actually am, because the definition of cuck that I'm familiar with is that it's kind of like a humiliation thing, that you want to feel small. You want to like watch a dude who's bigger than you fuck your girl because it's going to make you feel like, you know, in some way diminished. And that was never the intent for us. Number one, it was just a money decision. You know, we decided to do this because we thought it was a good business idea. If she wanted to just fuck another dude, and if that was the concern in all this, then we would have probably just, you know, film something or not film something, but just, you know, had another dude come through and have a threesome or whatever. That wouldn't have necessarily been off the table. The whole thing with us was that this was designed to get the most eyeballs on it as possible and get the most OnlyFans signups as possible. So do I feel like a cuck? No. I do understand that the average person's definition of a cuck is just pretty much like any guy who's willing to have their wife sleep with another guy that they will at some point see in particular. So I didn't really see it that way, but I definitely understand why people put it out there that way. And I even had a tweet at one point where I said, you know, if it makes me a cuck that I enjoyed watching my wife get fucked by another guy, then so be it, I'm a cuck. And like, sure enough, I had like 10,000 quote tweets that were like, yes, you are a cuck. Like, which doesn't really, it just doesn't really hit with me, because I'm open sexually to whatever extent, and I'm not cop and please about being into, you know, some freaky shit. Like, to me, that's just pretty whatever. At this point, especially, it just really doesn't seem anywhere near as shocking as other people seem to think it is.
Well, it's hard for someone to embarrass you when you put out all the shit yourself. You know what I mean? Like a Eminem 8 Mile kind of thing. Like, let me talk about all the shit that you're about to say about me, myself, so you can't say shit. And I mean, really, it's an interesting concept, because I started thinking about this whole cuck thing, and it's like, well, most men watch porn, right? They're watching women that they're attracted to have sex with other men.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't that sort of cuckish in its own type of way?
Yeah, and a lot of dudes are in denial.
You see what I'm saying?
Dudes are in denial about the fact that they have a preference about what kind of dick they're seeing the girl get fucked with, right?
There's that.
Where like not a lot of guys are going to be like, yeah, you know, I only like to see girls fuck, you know, a Mexican guy with a 6.5 incher, you know, or like dudes like clearly have a preference about what kind of dick the girl is getting down on, right?
I don't know. Me, not so much.
I don't think if I had to
for me, it's really about the girl. You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, I mean, the guy has to be a reasonable performer. Like, you can't just be soft the whole time.
I've clicked on porn and watched guys with tiny dicks fuck girls, and it ain't hidden. I'm not trying to see that. Like, it's just,
Japanese porn ain't your thing?
Nah, it just doesn't, it's not the same, you know? It's like, and even just like functionally, like just from an aesthetic point of view, a bigger dick is just like, you're watching a girl ride a big dick, it looks good. You watch a girl ride a tiny ass one, it's not the same, you know? In your day-to-day life, I'm sure those guys are fine, but as far as seeing it on camera, it's just not what the average person wants to see, right?
I mean, did your relationship with Lena change at all after this?
No.
Because that's everyone's question. No. You know, I mean, like, for example, every couple fights. Right? And when couples fight, old shit gets brought up.
Right.
Shit from years ago. Right. Shit that's always bothered them, sticking points, whatever else. Can you imagine you guys going at it one day and suddenly, you know, yeah, that's why I fucked motherfucker with a dick that's bigger than you, or yeah, you know, oh, you fucking that motherfucker, you know, I'm still mad about that. Like, you know what I mean? Like that type of shit.
We barely fight, you know, like we're very, very close, and when we do get into arguments or whatever, it tends to skew towards being a bit more holistic and trying to solve the problem. And I think that that's why we've done so well together, is that I can be a hothead. She's not. Her default mode is to de-escalate the situation. And so, but even with this specifically, like I can't imagine myself getting mad at her about something that I was involved in the decision-making process and the brainstorming of the idea. It would be like getting mad at your wife for taking an acting role where she had to kiss another guy or whatever, which I realize this is a little bit different. It's a little different. But it would be like that, because it's like, you know, she was performing a role to make money. and I was on board with it. I got behind the idea, and it's not the kind of thing that I have like stored up anger about. Now, some people probably think that I have like secret resentment that I'm not currently in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, because we haven't had anything like that since it happened. If anything, I think it brought us a little bit closer together, and I think it made me accept my role as a public figure a little bit more, in the sense that I feel much less scared to go to war with people publicly in terms of arguing and, just being this viral. It's like I can't even look at my Twitter mentions. Like I haven't even been able to look at my Twitter mentions for the past like month or so, where it's like there are probably long, in-depth threads about me going on different social media platforms that I have no fucking clue about. And that, to me, I found kind of liberating, of like just, having the whole situation put so many more eyeballs on me, that it's like I understand the extent to which I don't control my public image now, and I'm just kind of existing and rolling with the punches. And there's been days where I just didn't even look at any social media during all of this, and then I'll get on and I'll be like, oh, look, fucking Tucker Carlson is talking about me. That's crazy. I never would have expected that.
And you guys have made millions off this.
Yeah.
Millions with an S
Mm-hmm.
at the end, with a capital M. Did you buy anything nice with the money?
No.
No?
No. I have no materialistic aims. This is nothing.
Really?
No, I don't have any like fancy habits,
Right. Because the whole Lambo truck thing was fake.
That was a joke, yeah. I faked that. Some guy tried to explain it the other day, I heard, or expose it. But I mean, we filmed it in the parking lot of a pretty well-known exotic rental spot in LA. And that was a joke. Yeah, she said later on, like, that was a funny car for me to choose, because she would never drive that car in a million years.
Yeah.
I think me and her both aspire to basically take any money that we make and dump it into more business ventures, or buying property, or investing in things. That's the kind of stuff that we're interested in. But in terms of like, I don't care about clothes. I don't care about cars. I don't care about jewelry. Like, I just don't have any expensive habits. I mean, sometimes I play high stakes poker tournaments, but high stakes is like 10 or 20 grand,
Okay.
It doesn't really make too much of a dent.
Well, you threatened to expose Jason Love at one point if he kept running his mouth. What exactly are you going to expose?
Vlad, I wish I could tell you, but it's just, there's a porn code, as far as I'm concerned, where things happen on set. There's been times where I shot a scene with a girl and her vagina stunk to the high heavens. It was just the absolute worst thing you ever smelled in your entire life. But I'm not going to go on camera and talk about that, because I think that it kind of goes against the code of what we do, is like by filming yourself having sex with all these people. Of course, sometimes things are going to happen that are gross or weird, and you just don't put it out there. Basically, I know things about him on set, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and, really put that stuff out there, because I just consider it kind of inappropriate. I know that there's been times where I've shot an anal scene with a girl, and, all of a sudden she poops on me. I got a turd on my leg, I got a turd on my knee, really. And I remember I had a turd on my knee, and I talked about it with my girl. All right, no, I talked about it on the podcast. And then my girl told me, she goes, hey, I'm sure you never thought about it like this, but girls probably aren't going to want to shoot with us if you're like exposing the fact that they pooped on you or whatever, So ever since then, I've kind of been like very, very strict and careful about what I'll say and what I won't say on camera. So yeah, I could do some exposing, and he's done a little bit of the exposing himself. He's been a little bit like closer to divulging said secrets than I would have expected.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
I mean, when I heard that, the first thing I thought was like, he messes with transgenders.
No, nothing gay.
Okay, because that was the whole Brian Pumper like rumor for a while, and I even asked him that. I think,
and I don't think that there's any truth to that with Brian Pumper either, because actually this whole thing caused Brian Pumper to get in touch with me for the first time ever, and we actually had a nice long conversation.
Isn't he in jail?
No, he's out now.
He's out?
He's dealing with some legal stuff.
Oh shit. Okay.
But
Brian Pumper free.
Yeah.
Shout out to Brian Pumper. I know.
Backwards. Yeah. He told me he would do the interview at some point, but he's still dealing with some legal issues. So, because I did a Brian Pumper documentary at one point that has over 1 million views. Really, the proudest thing I have going for me in my entire life, including my child, is the fact that I did a Brian Pumper documentary,
including my child.
But he never did any gay stuff that we know of. There's no good evidence.
Well, and then a bunch of other, high-profile men wanted their turn up next. Kai Cenat, Antonio Brown. Am I forgetting anybody?
Probably. But
was it Aiden Ross? No.
I think that was more like me kind of suggesting it to him. I don't think
Okay.
he was really into it, even though I was joking around about him doing it in general as well.
I mean, at this point, do you care if you have, like, let's just say someone who you're friends with want to do a scene with your wife?
Mm-hmm.
Would you do it?
I mean, she's only. I mean, people seem kind of confused by it. This wasn't a situation where she was just dying to have a new dick inside her. It was a situation where she saw an opportunity to, in her career, because she's 32, before she fully like hangs it up at some point within the next couple of years and just does the mom thing full time. I think she and I both saw this as probably the best opportunity for her to fully profit maximize as long as she's doing this stuff. So the idea of her hooking up with somebody like Antonio Brown or fucking Guy Sinat is just like a joke to me. Yeah, like she'll do stuff with more adult performers, but all these guys who think that they have a shot, it's not. You know, this was all on camera stuff.
Okay, hold on. Let's keep it 100 because this is obviously a financial decision and so forth. So you mean to tell me if Antonio Brown agreed to do a scene with her that you would film and own, you wouldn't do it? I mean,
Well,
to think about this financially
you
for
are
a second.
activating the financial genius part of my
You see
brain a
where
little
I'm going
bit.
with this? You see where I'm going?
He would never do that.
Really? Because he has pulled out his penis, you know, in public places. He posted a picture of him, of his baby mother giving him head.
Yeah,
His kids has to see this at one point.
you make a good point, but do I think?
And his money situation is very different these days than it was a few years ago.
Yeah, because he hits me up to do or he didn't hit me up. His team hits my team up immediately after he sent out that tweet saying that he wanted next and says, "Oh, I want to do an interview. I'll drive from Vegas to do the interview." I say, "Okay." I get my team on it. They start researching him, whatever, because I don't know anything about this guy. And I'm like, "All right, this is gonna be a great interview. It'll be viral just because of the tweet that he sent out and everything." And then my publicist tells me he wants $5,000. And, you know, me and you both know that that's not totally out of line. That is the average person that I interview. Would I give them $5,000? Probably not. But would I give him it in a normal situation? Maybe. But I was like, I'm not giving you $5,000 when you just tweeted at me telling you want to fuck my fucking wife, you asshole. So I was like, I am not giving this guy $5,000. That made me feel, and then the interview did not happen because I said no to the $5,000. I kind of thought that I was calling his bluff and that he was going to, you know, concede and just do it anyway. Apparently Antonio Brown needs $5,000. So
I had 2 interviews with Antonio Brown scheduled, one of which he was in our studio and then walked out before the interview. And the other one, we're actually going to pay him more than $5,000. And then it turned into he wanted his money as soon as he walked in the door. And I said, no, I'll give it to you. And I'd already worked it out with his manager that he was going to get paid afterwards. I even had the cashier's check. And he like refused and hung up on me. You know what I mean? And then me and him kind of, you know, talked about it later. We kind of went back and forth in DMs and so forth. And he still wants to do something, but it's just like, it's just kind of scammy behavior. You know what I'm saying? Where it was just like, yeah, I'm good.
So, and in addition, like what I said about her working with the Jason Love guy, who had a few little comments that I didn't appreciate, but still, for the most part, I'll give it to him. He was mostly professional about it because when you work in the adult industry, you just get used to the standard being that you don't act weird or egotistical. You don't ever talk down on any of the other performers. Like these are things that you just kind of learn as time goes by if you want to be well liked in the industry and everything. And I don't think that the vast majority of adult performers would ever like disrespect me or say anything about it. But then we're not talking about an adult performer. We're talking about Antonio Brown, who, I mean, he's exhibiting crackhead behavior. I'm not sure if he's actually smoking crack or anything, but he's acting crazy as fuck. So yeah, like, I mean, the idea of her working with anybody that isn't a full-time adult performer is out of the question. And yeah, because anybody she works with is ultimately like my decision. Like she's made that perfectly clear that she's not trying to do anything that makes me feel uncomfortable or, you know, pushes the boundaries of what we got going on. Because at the end of the day, we are married, we have a kid, we have a business together. We've really built everything like that we've built in our careers together. So yeah, the sanctity of our relationship is very important, even if we might have different standards or different rules than the average relationship.
You have dick veto power.
Big veto power, yeah.
Okay, well, from what I understand, you made more off this scene the two of you made more off the scene than any scene you've ever done.
It is the best-selling OnlyFans scene of all time. So she made more than any woman or any man has ever made off of any adult scene in the OnlyFans era. It's kind of, I'm not sure how we would necessarily compare it to like the Kim Kardashian tape or whatever, but like that's really the only thing that I think you can compare it to. And
Right. Because
it's from
people
a very,
don't sell DVDs anymore. Yeah.
yeah, it's from a very different era. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, even just the conversations surrounding it have made me an absurd amount of money. Plug Talk, which is her and I's business, literally doubled in terms of how much money we're bringing in. And that's reoccurring subscriber revenue as well, which that's kind of been the greatest thing about this whole thing being so viral, is that every time you've gone viral, there's a YouTube video attached to it for the most part, right? So you have some video that's getting 1 million views, 2 million views as a result of the controversy or whatever. This has been like that, but instead it's like all these people signing up to pay us monthly at onlyplugtalk.com, which has been just absurd. So yeah, I mean, if I was a little bit trepidatious about it in the early stages, once I saw how much more interested this made people in our sex life, that definitely helped make up for it.
So you made millions off of this.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Do you consider you and Lena porn stars?
I saw you having this conversation with Ari Spears.
Yeah.
I don't like to say porn stars, because when I think about porn stars, I picture people like, I just know what these male porn stars go through on set. You know, they show up and they're on set for 8 hours and they have to just be able to get hard like that, be able to finish like that. And it's just, there's like a level of hard work that goes into being like a traditional porn star that I don't necessarily want to compare myself to, because I feel like I have a pretty easy breezy situation in comparison, where I can just kind of show up on set at, you know, a house that we own, and, you know, I get to film 20 or 30 minutes of fucking some girl with my girl, and then that's it, which is just like such a walk in the park compared to a lot of people. But would I say that I'm a porn star? Yeah, I guess at the end of the day. Or I would probably say I'm an adult film performer. Star kind of has a connotation about it, but
I mean, are you literally right now, you know, on this date, August 4th, 2023, the most famous male adult film performer right now at this very moment?
I'm sure, you know, like if you were to chalk it up to like social media stats or whatever, you know, you have somebody like Johnny Sins who's super well known, but you compare like the last month of my life of just going insanely viral with this, like I'm sure if you were to look at the Google stats, you know, or maybe you have somebody like Ron Jeremy whose better days are clearly behind him.
Yeah, I mean, he's
in prison. Yeah.
He has dementia.
Right.
Yeah, so
he's locked up.
And he's locked up. You know,
Yeah. So I guess it is probably fair to say that, which is kind of crazy. I mean, even on Pornhub, Lena was ranked #1 the other day. So even though she hasn't put anything on Pornhub related to this, like you have to go to her OnlyFans if you want to see it. But I mean, she's #1 porn star in the world. There was like many days where I would wake up, look at Twitter, and I would be like within the top 10 things trending in the whole world. I would just be like, how the fuck is this a real situation?
Hey man, look, every relationship is different.
Yeah.
And just because someone out there, their relationship is more quote unquote traditional and they don't agree, you know, it is what it is. And I'm sure that a lot of men that voted my poll who said they would never do this, when you look at their actual relationships, you're going to see a lot of interesting things in those relationships. A lot of compromises, a lot of acceptance, and so forth.
That poll that you did really let me know that I'm built different than the average dude, because that, to me, 200 threesomes and she gets to fuck one guy. Like if it was that black and white, I'm all in on the threesomes. Like to me, that is the greatest deal I've ever heard. Like,
well, I didn't even say threesomes. I said have sex with 200 women.
Yeah, even
which makes it even more appealing for the man.
But I think part of it is that like a lot of guys, I don't want to make it out like, oh, you're insecure if you don't let someone else fuck your wife. But I do think a lot of guys have insecurities about their relationship, and to them, they're kind of worried about their girl leaving them or their girl enjoying sex with someone else. I feel like over the years, seeing her fuck so many different women on camera, as well as just knowing so many people in the porn industry who have open relationships and are able to shoot with other people on camera and it's all good. I think that just kind of made me sort of like numb to the whole idea of it. And yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like anywhere near as big a deal as I felt like it was prior to this.
I mean, look, you are shaking the foundations. You know, at first I said America, but, you know, once I started thinking about it, really shaking the foundations of marriage historically worldwide. Because look, I just got back from Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
Women are wearing full-blown burqas, like with just an eye slit. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, there's the ones mostly who are covering their hair, which is a big thing also.
Mm.
But even on the plane, there was women who had the full black with just a slit for their eyes, which means that not only are men not okay with other men fucking their women, they don't even want another man to even know what she looks like.
Insane.
You see what I'm saying? You can see my wife's eyeballs, and that's where it stops.
Yeah.
Okay? I'll give you 2 eyeballs, and that's all you get. Right? Oh, you want to see a nose? Fuck that shit. No, you can't see her chin.
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
Yeah. No, I've never understood why. I mean, I feel for those women. I kind of feel like that should be illegal right there, because that's just seems like the most anti-woman, just abusive thing possible. And I want to respect other cultures and shit, but to me, that has always just seemed to me as something that like society at some point really has to leave that shit in the rearview mirror.
Oh, yeah. In Saudi Arabia, which is right next door to Dubai, women were just recently allowed the ability to drive.
Right, yeah.
They couldn't even drive by themselves. You know what I'm saying? It gets very serious. So here comes Adam. Who's in the exact opposite direction of where we are.
Yeah.
Fucking everyone's, set of values and everything else like that. Me personally, I personally don't give a shit.
Because
you know what I'm saying?
You're older and you've been living in the LA area for long enough that you know how common the swinger lifestyle is.
Yep.
And so to me and her aren't really like swingers. We haven't really got that far with it. She just did one adult scene with another guy and was basically rewarded with the greatest amount of publicity and money that you could ever imagine. You know, I know tons of chicks who are fucking people for $1,000, you know, like, and she got paid millions basically. Well, I got to give it to her. Like she's a fucking genius, because she had the idea to tease it. Instead of just dropping it, she put it out as like an announcement, and then for like 2.5 weeks or some shit, we were just kind of teasing it online. And meanwhile, before the scene even came out, her OnlyFans had exploded to like 5 times as many subscribers as she had before all this. So that was kind of mind blowing, and I think she really knocked it out of the park with the whole teasing it before it came out thing.
Yeah, man. Listen, props on a business level.
Appreciate
You know, people have their own ideas. Philosophically, morally, whatever else. But at the end of the day, it's not your relationship. You know what I mean? You're not sleeping with her every night. You don't have a kid with her. You're not married to her. Not your decision.
It occurs to me, just like seeing the feedback that I got from it, that this above all else seems like the thing that upsets people. Like, I doubt that like gay couples get anywhere near the level of attack that I got from this. You know, it's like, this is like the one thing that we seem like we've all kind of accepted, that, you know, interracial relationships are fine. People want to have gay relationships. That's fine. But somehow the cuck thing, just to people, it is so offensive. And this is the first time that I really drew the ire of the conservatives. I never really had like, you know, the crazy conservative right-wing element coming for me like this. And then all of a sudden now I got Andrew Tate talking about me with Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens doing segments about me and stuff, which, you know, it just like there was a long period of my life where I was sort of bothered by people talking about me publicly and didn't appreciate it. And now it's just like I can't even begin to respond to the sheer number of people that got something to say about this whole situation. So in that way also, I think it's just been really positive for me, because I feel like now I can see a tweet about me that has 10,000 likes and just not even bother to, you know, click on it or bother to, you know, see what people have to say about it. It just feels like I have kind of like entered a higher level of not giving a fuck, thanks to Jason Love's big black dick. So.
Well, speaking of adult film stars, what's your take on Zion Williamson and Mariah Mills?
So I've been hitting her up for years now, trying to get her to come on Plug Talk, and she was always acting a little bit scared of it. And now I guess I understand why, because she was kind of Zion Williamson's like, you know, fake girlfriend or side chick or whatever for this whole time. You know, he doesn't seem like the most brilliant guy on earth. He seems like the kind of guy who just got a lot of money and is just kind of like a pure sex addict and is just doing I've heard about a lot of NBA players over the years doing this, where they sort of, you know, have a different girl in every different city and they're paying their bills and they're allowing them to, you know, basically do what they want, but they're having some degree of control over them. To me personally, I don't really get it. I don't feel like it. If I had $1 billion, this is not what I would choose to be doing with my money.
No, none of these guys have $1 billion.
Right, but I'm saying even if I had $1 billion, the last thing I'd be doing is thinking, oh yeah, baby, I'm gonna give you $100,000 a month so that you can like live in this penthouse apartment and fuck me when I come to town.
Well. I doubt any of these girls are getting $100,000 a month. I know Mariah said this. I don't believe it. Okay?
Probably true, yeah.
I'm sure she's gotten some thousands of dollars. And maybe if you add it all up, it might add up to 100.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, it's not like we're talking about a non-desirable man.
Right.
You know, this is a superstar NBA athlete. He's young. He's in good shape. You know, I mean, he's famous. I'm sure the ticket. I'm sure these girls aren't trying to break him like they would like some older businessman or something.
Right. But
You
I
know?
mean, when you think about somebody like him, it's like his other options for girls are going to be these like aspiring NBA wife type chicks who like basically want to, you know, just end up in a relationship with this guy because they know that he's going to take good care of them and he's going to shower them with money and everything. But then also those same girls are probably going to be more closed-minded about him fucking all kinds of girls. He's still young. He probably just really wants to have a bunch of hot porn chicks on the roster. And then, you know, with something like the Mariah Mills thing, it's like you eventually get to see what fucking a ton of different women who are clearly suffering from some sort of mental illness eventually leads you to. I mean, for me, it's like I feel like I have sex so demystified at this point because for sure, if I go all the way back to when I was before No Jumper, 7 years before, a lot of this stuff probably would have seemed a lot more appealing to me. Whereas now sex has just been so demystified. You know, I fucked like 5-6 chicks yesterday, like it was nothing. And, you know, it was great. I had a great time, but it just doesn't feel as, you know, important as it felt to me when I was a younger man. And this stuff was all much harder to line up and more off limits, you know?
You know what's interesting about Mariah, because I interviewed Van Lathan. I don't know if you saw this segment.
I did, yeah.
Where I pointed out to Van that Mariah only did scenes with white men.
Yeah.
And he was like, no. And he pulled out his phone. He was like, oh, shit, you're right.
And she was the cause of me going to ghettogaggers.com for the first time and seeing, like, I mean, that website is crazy because it's just every single thumbnail is a black woman with a big old you know what all over her face. And in every single one, they look very uncomfortable. And I'm sure they tell them to look uncomfortable with it. I mean, there's a lot of like very odd racialized adult content out there that I don't necessarily know about because I deal in more mainstream circles. But yeah, definitely. And it's all white guys banging these chicks on that site as well. But yeah, I didn't know that she only shot with white guys. It is a pretty common trajectory for women in porn to shoot with all white guys before they start to shoot with black guys, in the same way that like women will do all vaginal before they do anal, or they'll do all one-on-one before they do threesomes and orgies or gangbangs or anything like that. So I guess I'm really not surprised because she probably had an agent or a manager at a certain point telling her, wait to do your first scene with a black guy because that's sort of an additional level that people are looking forward to, you know? But yeah, definitely to the average person, probably seems very racist.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, people shoot who they want to shoot with, and they have careers, and obviously this is a business for her. You know, Zion didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he's a young guy. He's got money. I'm sure he was watching tons of porn movies when he was in college and maybe even high school. And now he got some money, and now he can slide into people's DMs, and they get he gets an answer right away, and he got the money to pay him. And, you know, he gets another girl pregnant. There's probably not the best communication that was happening along the way. Because at the end of the day, I feel like as long as you treat people well and respectfully and treat people like human beings. You know, I've always have a thing about never let a woman leave angry. You know, even if you have to humble yourself, even if you have to apologize for things you didn't do, even if you have to give her some extra money, you know what I mean, to smooth things along, somehow buy her something nice, whatever. Don't let that woman walk out bad, because God knows what's about to happen after that.
I'm not gonna lie though. I heard you talking about this with academics, and I think I agree with him that you seem a little bit naive to how nasty some of these girls are.
Oh, no,
out
I'm
there.
not naive. I've had very nasty women.
But I feel like they've gotten a lot worse. I feel like nowadays these chicks have additional tricks in their bag because it's so appealing for somebody like Mariah Mills to go to the media, to make things public. Think about what has happened to her social media and her OnlyFans and how much money she's making from her, you know, self-sustained business since doing this. Like, the incentives are just so strong for her to put this shit out into the public eye that it's just a more horrible situation, I think, than you might know.
Possibly. You know, and also there's a whole thing about dating women who are on social media like that versus who aren't, because not every woman is on social media. You know, some women, you know, they might have an Instagram account or a Twitter account, but they're not out there trying to be celebrities.
Right.
I think once you mess with celebrities, you have to deal with celebrity shit to go along with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Tory Lanez. By the time this comes out, he will be sentenced. August 7th is his sentencing date. Today is August 4th. So, you know, his lawyers are actually asking for probation and have him stay in a drug treatment facility because of past trauma and alcoholism.
He's got a lot of nerve.
Listen, I've been saying this for like 2 years, that Tory's going to be found guilty and he's going to go to prison. Just because of everything I know about this case and everyone I've spoken to and going through the paperwork and everything else like this, it's like, you could dance around it all you want. You could blame it on Rock Nation. You could blame it on Kelsey. You could blame it on social media. But at the end of the day, he shot her. And she took the stand and said, he shot me. So it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out what's going to happen next if he goes to court, right? Unless he figures out some sort of crazy plea deal that's just probation, he's going to jail, especially if he goes to court. And I remember at one point he DM'd me and he was all trying to figure out what I knew, and he's calling me a cop and all this other type of shit. And I'm like, you insulting the wrong person right now. Like I'm not your problem.
Tory Lanez is someone who I feel like, if anybody, and I don't wish prison on anybody, but if there's anybody out there that seems like they could really use some prison time, it might be him. Because my whole time knowing him and being around him, I've just seen nothing but just hothead behavior and just him acting like a total fucking jabroni. There's an underground rapper named Dax that...
Yeah, right. He pulled out a gun on him, right?
Yeah, you know, and there's a video of him sort of like taunting him and like his boys beat his ass or whatever. I remember even one time at the store, my old store, this is maybe 2018, whenever I interviewed Tory Lanez, that we got done doing the interview, and he has a big-ass security guard with him, and the security guard didn't have a gun. But there was like a bunch of gang members who basically pulled up to the store and had sort of surrounded his Sprinter that he had arrived in, and it was like parked in the back of the store, and they're sort of milling around out there and stuff, and Tory wanted to leave and get in the car, but it's pretty obvious that they're going to have to deal with this whole situation before that happens. Now, one of my homies had a gun, and the security guard asked if he could take the gun. This is all a terrible idea, but he asked if he could take the gun to go out and speak to these guys, right, and try to figure out what the issue was. And Tory starts jumping up and down, being like, "No, I want to hold it. I want to be the one with the gun." So you got this motherfucker. He's like 7 foot tall, big, crazy face tattoos and shit. He's a real gang member from LA who had just gotten out of prison or whatever. And Tory wanted to be the one holding the strap when they go out to have this conversation with these guys. And I believe the security guard, as well as his team, kind of did not allow this to happen. They didn't let him go out there with the gun or whatever. But that just really stood out to me as like, oh, you're famous and you're rich, and you still, even though you have a security guard with you, you're not willing to, like, you want to be the badass in this situation. You want to be the hothead. And I had the same exact thing happen as with you, where the No Jumper social media was just posting regular shit, updates about his trial and everything. And, you know, he comes up in my DMs basically calling me a piece of shit and attacking me and telling me that, you know, I'm falling off and my business is fucked or whatever. And I was going to see what was going to happen or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have those experiences with him. So I can't lie. I feel like he is somebody that probably could do with 10 years behind bars because he is a fucking asshole.
Well, look, I mean, at no point does he admit any involvement whatsoever in this. He comes up with a bunch of conspiracy theories that Jay-Z has something to do with him going to prison or something.
Yeah.
His dad goes on this weird tirade. He calls the judge and the prosecutors racist, and how they're trying to send an innocent black man to prison away from his family. He mocked the situation while he was out before the trial.
Music videos and stuff. Yeah.
Did music videos. He made songs about it. He continued to get into problems. He got into it with August Alsina while still on bail. It's just like, I think what happened, if you just, from my point of view, because I did a bunch of polls about this and I talked about it, and everyone, whenever I did a poll, Tory's innocent, he's going to be found not guilty, Megan's a liar, Kelsey shot her, like everyone in all the polls and all social media were all siding with Tory, especially with my fan base, which is mostly male. Right.
And your fan base, who are clearly big fans of misinformation. I feel like whenever I see you do a poll, and I'm not commenting on the poll about me, but just in general, whenever I see you do a poll and I vote in it and I click, I just am usually kind of let down by the response.
Right. I have a conspiracy theory audience. And listen, I could see how your head could somehow get filled up and saying like, yeah, the public's behind me and I'm going to win this trial. And it's like, yo, that shit don't matter. It's a fucking jury. It's a jury of 12 people who don't give a shit about social media, honestly.
If he got off on this, it would have been a travesty of justice. It would have said something very dark and depressing about our legal system if he had been able to walk away from this.
I mean, look, obviously every trial is different and every strategy is different. But like, for example, I interviewed Hurricane Chris, who killed somebody in self-defense. And, he came in after, he reached out to me and said, hey, I want to talk about this trial. I just beat it. You know what I'm saying? It was his idea to do it. And we talked about it. And I'm like, listen, a lot of times, in especially murder trials, the lawyer would tell the defendant not to take the stand because it's not up to the defendant to prove that he's innocent. It's just up to the defense to prove reasonable doubt. That's it. And he was like, yeah, but I'm not going to leave it in another person's hands when it comes to the rest of my life. I felt I was innocent. I felt that I shot this man in self-defense. I felt my life was in danger. He had a weapon on him that we found out after the fact. He had some huge piece of stone, brick or something in his pocket. And he was approaching me. I was telling him whatever. But look, I took the stand. And I defended myself and I was found not guilty.
Oh no, I knew I was gonna talk from day one. It was never a thought in my mind of silencing me. This is my life. I know exactly what happened. I mean, my lawyer is a terrific lawyer, and he did an amazing job, Alex Washington, but at the end of the day, I had to get up there and say my part, bro. I couldn't just put everything in their hands like that. I gotta look these people in their eyes because my life is in their hands. I want to talk directly to these people and see if they could see I'm not no lying ass nigga right now. You understand what I'm saying? I'm looking you straight in your face, telling you exactly what happened. I'm not gonna bullshit with you. I'm gonna answer when you ask me a question. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to get up there. You know what I'm saying? And she cross-examined me back. She cross-examined me and it got ugly. So I still didn't regret getting up there, bro. I had to speak my part because I feel like the jury, they feel like, all right, it's 12 of us. Everybody done said what they gotta say. So I feel like the jury looking at it like, if you don't say nothing, then you basically hiding behind your lawyers. An innocent person, it's hard to make them be quiet because you ain't did shit.
At the end of the day, if Tory really had nothing to do with it, I did not shoot her, I did not have the gun, these girls were fighting it out, and one of them grabbed the gun and it went off, I would take the fucking stand. Fuck what my lawyer talking about, because clearly the lawyer didn't do a great job for you, right? You're now facing 13 years. I would absolutely, if I didn't have nothing to do with it, I would take the stand. But if I did do it, then no, I would not take the stand. And I think that's ultimately what happened. He knew that he did it. he had his victim crying on the stand, and he knew that if he were to take the stand, he wouldn't be able to properly defend himself. He wouldn't be able to lie his way out of it, which honestly, I feel like he's lying about it.
Of course.
And I think that between the calling the prosecutors racist, never admitting to anything, whatever else, having this air of I'm a victim, I did nothing, and so forth, that's what's going to cause a bigger penalty when it comes to the sentencing. Because they could have been like, listen, this guy, if he would have said in the very beginning, yo, I fucked up. I'm so sorry, Megan. Whatever comes of this, I accept. But I am sorry. I'm going to do things to try to make up for this. I'm going to apologize to her in court. I'm going to plead guilty and try to figure out a good plea deal, something. I think things would have gone very differently. You could have potentially, you had an angry woman on that stand. You know what I'm saying? Who had been dealing with his little jabs and barbs and stuff like that. Like you fucking with someone who could put you away that you shot. And your dumb ass is mocking her, making it worse. Like, okay, cool. I'll have my day in court.
Yeah, I felt like he made the situation about as bad as he possibly could for himself, while also doing everything he could to win over public opinion, which he did very effectively.
Which doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all.
Okay, well, ultimately, by the time this comes out, Tory will be sentenced. Unless, of course, they give him probation, which, who knows? It seems a bit unlikely at this point, considering, that he tried to get the case thrown out and everything else like that. Try to get the judge thrown out, try to get a retrial. I mean, he's going to appeal, of course, but yeah, it just is what it is. He made his bed, now he has to lie in it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's not my favorite person out there, but I do hope that by the time he gets done his sentence or whatever, that he's a better person as a result, because it seems to me that if it wasn't this Megan situation, that it probably would have been some other situation, because think about the level of nutcase that you need to be in order to get into an argument with a woman, never mind a rich, famous woman, a celebrity, and pull out a fucking gun and shoot at her. I mean, that's just, we're talking about a level of crazy that I'm sure if me and you lived to be 3,000 years old, we would never find it within ourselves to do something like this. So, I mean, he's a special case, and I kind of feel like the justice system is designed for people like him who make terrible decisions like this. And he's probably never coming back to America, which might be for the best.
YNW Melly. Mistrial.
Yeah.
He was facing the death penalty.
Crazy.
And the judge actually ruled you could do a 8-4 voting to give him the death penalty.
Really?
Which is even crazier to me. Yeah, you would think it'd be unanimous decision.
Yeah, I thought it always had to be unanimous.
No, but in this case, Florida.
Okay.
But when it went to the jury, it ended up being a mistrial. Now, his mom had posted that she found out that 9 of the members were going to vote against, basically non-guilty, and then 3 of them were going to vote guilty. And she was, basically celebrating, saying, okay, if there is a retrial, he's probably going to win. But one of the jury members actually came forward and said, actually, that's not true. And it was a response to Melly's mother and said, in fact, there was only one woman that was the holdout for him being not guilty, and she had kind of been the holdout the entire time, and then she went at the last minute and convinced 2 other people to go along with her. And ultimately, but he said it was 9-3 for a guilty verdict. Have you ever interviewed Melly?
Yeah, so my relationship with Melly, I knew him because, 100K Track, who his manager, I met him super randomly in Atlanta in like 2017. I went to a studio session with a producer, Drummer Boy, and I met Track, who at the time was kind of like working for Kodak, doing the Sniper Gang clothing line and everything. And he told me, he's like, I got this artist, like, you should check him out. He got this really dope song called Murder on My Mind. He sends me the link. I end up checking it out, and I was amazed by it. I thought he was super talented, but he was still locked up at the time. So then when I had my deal with Atlantic, they say, do you have any artists that you're interested in signing? I say, yeah, check this song out. I play them Murder on My Mind. They loved it. They're like, let's get him out here ASAP. So they fly him and his family out to LA, and we do meetings with Atlantic and everything, trying to sign him. But then at some point, Atlantic realizes that Melly was already signed to 300 and basically was just using this as an opportunity to come hang out with me, get a free trip to LA, etc.
Wow. Okay.
And so Atlantic loses their fucking mind. They're so pissed off about this. And I think that they actually got reimbursed for the flights and the hotel and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and during that time period, I went to the studio with him a couple times, and you know, he was a crazy dude. Like I remember some random white girl just shows up at Atlantic at the APG building, for anybody who's ever been there, and this motherfucker's getting his dick sucked in the bathroom of the, like, in the like, this is a real corporate building with, like, you know, normal women working the desk and stuff, and the bathroom is like kind of near these women. And he got some thought that he just met on Instagram that's sucking his dick in the bathroom. And I just remember thinking, like, this is a wild boy right here. Like, a lot of rappers would not feel comfortable doing this, would want to be a little bit more low key about it. Now, I remember even during that time period that he was really tapping in with different gang members, like from LA and stuff. Like, he had no worries about, like, meeting up with different people that, in my opinion, from my perspective, are pretty dangerous, you know, and he was fully embracing it. But I mean, I always had like a real cool relationship with him. You didn't necessarily, like, I interviewed him at one point real early on. I didn't feel like you got to see me and him having like a really friendly vibe, because he kind of came in with a very different energy about him. But there was one clip that went super viral from that interview where he was telling me about how he had his boys tattooed on his face, his like real homies, and it said Juvie and Sack Chaser on his face, and they were sitting right there while I was doing the interview. And then obviously these are the dudes who end up dead a couple of years later. But that being said, every time I've spoken to Melly on the phone since he's been locked up, it's been nothing.
Oh, you guys have spoken while he was in jail?
Yeah. A couple times as a result, like I was hanging out with 100K Track and Drew and stuff. Was that's like his team. They're super close with him, and I was happy when I got on the phone with him. And he was I couldn't believe how positive he was after being in jail for a couple of years. But he was super excited to talk to me, and I think like with somebody like him, when you have a relationship with them before they're really popular, that, you know, a lot of times that kind of goes a long ways with them. But yeah, I mean, I'm really hoping that he does beat the case. I mean, I would have thought, I guess I have a limited understanding of the justice system, but I would have thought that him not being able to be convicted by the jury would have been enough. But I mean, I don't know if his odds are significantly worse this time around. It feels like there's got to be like a level of fatigue. Like, how are they even going to find jurors who aren't familiar with the details of this case at a certain point? I don't know, but I feel for him, and you know, I have a good relationship with his mom and stuff. I had his mom on the podcast a few months back.
Okay.
And his little brother B Slime, and yeah, I don't know.
It's an ugly situation, man. I mean, in terms of the retrial, well, I mean, both sides know more about the case now and know more about the strategies that they'll both use. It's not going to be a surprise, and both sides could prepare to deal with a counteroffensive in these situations. It could go either way. You know, there could be another mistrial.
Yeah.
And then it's really up to the prosecutors to decide whether they want to keep doing this trial or whether they want to lower the penalties to try to get a conviction or maybe even do a plea deal.
Right.
But he's been locked up for like 4 years. You would think after the mistrial he would at least get a bond.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy when I think about it, because I have so many friends from that sort of like 2016, 2017 era who died like almost exclusively from guns or drugs. And then he's like the weird one that he hasn't been around us, or we haven't really got to see what would happen with his career for so many years now, but he's still here. He's just locked up. And I mean, the fact that they even made him wait 5 years before they would put him on trial is pretty insane. But I mean, when you think about the heights that he was starting to reach with his career at the moment that he got locked up, when I remember he had this Lyrical Lemonade video with Kanye, and, you know, he was really, like, even his album that came out right before he got locked up was amazing. That was the last thing that I ever said to him before he got locked up. I just sent him a DM and I was like, yo, this album is incredible. He's like, oh, thanks, brother. It's good to hear from you. Boom. Next day, arrested for murder. I was just like, what the fuck? Like, because this is part of what makes me have some uneasiness about getting really close to the people that I interview is that I've just lost so many of them, you know, from Draco to X to Juice WRLD to Peep. It's just, you get close to these people and then they just get ripped away from you so consistently that it just becomes kind of hard to convince yourself in your mind to get close to them.
Yeah, rest in peace, Gangster Boo.
There's another great example.
You know, someone who I've interviewed multiple times. She'd been in my house. We hung out maybe about a month before she passed. Fentanyl. Fentanyl's a motherfucker.
I heard she died like on the porch at her friend's house or her mom's house or some shit like that, just sitting in a rocking chair or some shit on the porch. She was one of the most pivotal interviews for me early on. It's not like it was crazy view wise or anything like that, but like just being able to get an interview with her and just somebody who was such a big part of the 3-6 saga, like was such a confidence boost for me, because in the BMX world and the skateboard world and shit, 3-6 Mafia have like a presence that are bigger than I think people would expect, because just a lot of the most legendary bike and skate videos over time have had 3-6 Mafia songs in them and everything. And even with her, like there was just a lot of skateboarders that she was really like family with, like this guy Beagle, who's like one of the filmers for Baker. Just real early on, they had a great relationship. And, you know, over time, I mean, she was there the first date that I went on with Lena. She was there. And we got to hang out with her because I actually brought Lena with me to an interview that she did with me, where she was interviewing me. And I mean, she was just such a warm personality and such a cool person. And I always knew that she had, you know, struggles with drugs. I would hear about it from other people and stuff. But yeah, that was a tough one to see her go. Yeah,
rest in peace. You know, she was definitely crazy in person. But that's what made her Gangster Boo. Yeah. You know, she wouldn't be Gangster Boo if she didn't have that personality. She was inappropriate. She was, you know what I mean? But that's what made her kind of charming in her own way.
And I think she was like 15 when she was signed to 3-6.
Really?
Or like some very young age. So she was introduced to the rapper lifestyle. And I mean, keep in mind, these guys were partying like a lot harder than most of the rappers from that generation. So she got ushered into a way of life very early on. I think that she managed to, I think her and Juicy squashed the issues that they had before she passed and stuff, which was good. I'm glad I sat down with her maybe a year before she passed and did an interview. So I'm glad that I was able to, you know, get some more FaceTime with her before she passed. But that was a terrible one.
G-Herbo.
Yeah.
5 years. Over scams or over credit card scams of like 1.5 million. He also has to pay 140,000 in restitution. I know it's killing him because whatever shit that he got caught up in, he could have easily paid for these days. You know what I'm saying? Being the profile that he is right now, having the big fan base, you know, plus he's kind of connected to a couple of celebrity women who he has kids with, from Ari to Taina. To have to just stop everything you're doing and do 5 years in prison
for trying to get some money.
Yeah.
Is just, it's got to feel different where, you know, if you shoot somebody and then you end up doing jail time behind it, I mean, there's probably still a part of you that feels like you did what you had to do in that situation, right? Maybe not always. I'm sure Tory Lanez hopefully doesn't feel like that. But, you know, but like committing a crime to get $150,000 or whatever he ended up profiting off of this is pretty reasonable for a normal person or a broke person. But when you look at somebody like him who, you know, he could go on tour and make $150,000 by the end of the week, or I have no idea what kind of money he makes on tour or whatever, but Herbo's a real legend. Like, he's just beloved by the fans. I think a lot of times his influence is not properly noted when it comes to drill, because I've heard people tell me that, like, in terms of the New York drill kids and stuff, that like his legend status is even more cemented with those kids than a lot of people would expect. Like he might not get mentioned as much as Sosa or Dirk or Vaughn or whatever, but he's, you know, as a lyricist, he definitely deserves to be in the conversation of the most important street rappers of the last 10 years, I think.
Well, yeah, I felt didn't put out as much content as he should. As many songs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He kind of stayed quiet for long periods of time. Like, you know.
And now we know why.
Well, we don't actually, because
he's comfortable doing his thing in the streets. You don't need the industry.
I mean, listen, I mean, I'm pretty close with Bibby, you know, but Bibby went and actually started a whole different type of business and was wildly successful with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He signed Juice World.
Yeah.
He signed Kid Leroy. Like, you know, that's why he stopped doing music. I don't know why Herbo stopped doing music.
Yeah. But I mean,
you know, I mean, I'm not saying he stopped, but he definitely did not, like, he wasn't on the grind, like putting out projects, you know, like, you know, but at the end of the day, man, I mean, I've interviewed her before. He's cool. Cool dude. I got nothing bad to say about him in the least.
It's hard to leave the streets behind for some people. And let's just remember, we still don't know who was responsible, but...
No, it was some other dude, I think, that was sort of the ringleader of all this, and he was kind of going along with it.
Okay.
He was on the private flights and doing shit with him, and I guess when they got caught, he lied about his connection to it and so forth. And yeah, man, listen, the wheels of justice spin very slowly.
But I'm just saying that, like, when Juice WRLD died, there was a lot of weed on that plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who put these, like, you know, dozens of pounds of weed on the jet, right? But, you know, I'm just saying that somebody involved, like, decided that that was a good idea, that even though they were fully up in the industry and doing things on a legal level, that they still wanted to be trafficking weed. Now, I'm not at all saying that Herbo was, like, directly involved with that.
Wait, was Herb on the plane?
No, I don't think so. But I'm just saying that, like, you know, if I had to guess, some of the people involved with how that weed got there is probably related to, you know, some street dudes that basically had probably been doing that before Juice WRLD got famous, and then decided that this was a good opportunity to keep making more money in an additional revenue stream. So, yeah, I mean, I feel for Herbo when it comes to that, but I don't know. You gotta make better decisions, man. That really makes me think twice about anything that I could ever get involved with, because I don't know, would I have the common sense to say no if somebody was like, oh yeah, I got this Airbnb, you know, and you could stay there or whatever while we're on this trip, and maybe I had a sense that they were doing something illegal. Would I necessarily have the self-control to be like, nah, like, I don't want anything to do with that? Thinking about this situation,
I got the self-control to
hopefully.
do that shit. I steered clear of that shit. Honestly, listen, on my early careers, did I have, like, street dudes put me under their wing, and, you know what I'm saying? And we drive around with guns in the car and drugs in the car probably and stuff like that. Yeah, I was there when I was broke. But, you know, you get older, you got to act your age. You know, there's certain people you can't be around anymore. There's certain people you got to, because you know you're going to get caught up in their bullshit. You know, you can't have these entourages with a bunch of dudes that might be involved in crimes, because you're going to be the face of all that shit. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have nothing to do with that shit. You know, I mean, I don't use, you know, the homie securities anymore, like, you know, the street guys, the guys that could push their weight around. Like, yo, like, if I have security, it's like actual police security. You know, in New York, I have full-blown NYPD security these days. I'm not fucking around anymore, because my thing is, like, you're not going to beat the NYPD. It's the biggest police department in the country, in the world, actually. Okay, so you're not gonna, if this turns into an issue, you're going to take the loss. I'm not fucking around with my homie who got the illegal gun, who gonna shoot someone and say he don't know what happened, and suddenly I'm getting sued, or maybe I'm going to prison, or whatever else. I'm gonna have the cop that's gonna say, I am police officer, here's my badge number, and here's what happened. Mm-hmm. And that's that.
No, definitely, yeah. Makes me think twice about it, too. Like, if you have someone around you that you know is involved in any kind of illegal activity, you got to really think twice about, you know, even just having them around as a liability.
Even just having them around.
Buying them or buying them anything or paying for anything for them, it really just kind of forces you to start to do the math in your head of like, well, this could definitely be recontextualized to look very, very bad for me if it was presented a certain way. So, yeah, it's definitely makes me think twice about a lot of things.
The YSL case is still going on, and apparently one of the YSL members was sacrificing a goat in some sort of crazy voodoo ritual type shit.
Right.
and they're trying to stop that from being in evidence. And this case really hasn't even started yet. It's still in jury selection.
Total disaster, as far as what I can tell, that just the fact that it's taken this long. I mean, although I guess at the same time, the fact that the Melly situation or like Tax's situation, Tax got sentenced since the last time that we spoke. I mean, these are situations where these guys had to sit down for 5 years before they even got put on trial. So I guess in comparison to that, Thug is doing pretty good by being able to like have the trial proceedings going on. But Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the craziest things about it is just the fact that that Gunna all of a sudden has like the #1 song in the country, or maybe not literally #1, but
It was #1 on Spotify the other day.
yeah.
Yeah, Fuck You Mean was #1 on Spotify, and this is actually going to be my next topic. This completely destroys any idea of your career being affected by snitching.
Right, because we all saw 6ix9ine's career take, a massive dive as a result of him snitching. I think the thing that stands out to me now is that a lot of people wanted to see him fail regardless. And I think he failed when it came to making music that people were excited about. Whereas with the Gunna album, I think it's a very good album. I think that in particular, the song that's doing really well, Fuck You Mean, has always stood out to me as like, oh, that's a hit. And, Gunna is someone who people seem to generally like before this situation. And then he snitched. Now, granted, like there's levels to snitching, and what Gunna did is not anywhere near as egregious as what 6ix9ine did, Right. But as a result, Gunna seems like he's doing fine. He might not be ever really accepted by the street rappers in the same way. But I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily predicted this, because to me, Gunna always seemed like a guy who had a nice voice, a bit of a talent for, flows and rhythm and everything. But he never really seemed to have enough depth that I would have assumed that people would have been on board with him in the long run. But I don't know. It seems like it's going pretty well. And did you see that his ex-girlfriend, Chloe Bailey, that she had a video of her covering Fuck You Mean on Twitter and like fully singing along to it, like doing these crazy notes and shit? I thought it was so unbelievably cringe. And I saw right away, I'm like, it had like 5,000 quote tweets. And I hit the quote tweet button. And of course, there was a lot of Pusha T quote tweets, which I know you've been dealing with as well.
I know, I'm caught up in this shit. Apparently, I helped traffic children to Pusha T. And I also, I raped Hezbollah. And I'm somehow involved in the salamander thing somehow as well.
I don't understand. Like,
are you part of it too?
Well, they don't really like tailor it to be about me, but a few times in recent memory, I've looked at a tweet of mine and it said, "Oh, this has 300 quote tweets," and I think, "Oh, that's more than I would expect. That seems pretty good." And then I click on it, and it's like really weird, tailored, personalized hatred towards Pusha T, accusing him of like child trafficking and like just like the worst things that you could really think about saying about somebody. And there's these bots that say it about Pusha T.
Right.
That's kind of its own thing. But the Chloe Bailey thing, like she dipped. She was out as soon as he caught the case. And now, like, is this her way of sort of getting on his good side again by performing a cover of his song on Twitter? I don't know, but it feels like the world is perhaps warming up to Gunna once again.
I mean, look, Lil Duval said the snitching doesn't matter anymore. It's just free promo. And it's kind of hard to argue it at this point. Because I remember I had 600 Breezy. And the idea that me and him came up with, right, which made sense to me and him at the time, was the only way that Gunna could get back to the top of his career was if Young Thug publicly said, "Hey, I'm co-signing Gunna. He's good. Go ahead and support his work," which Young Thug never did. And yet he now has his biggest solo song ever on his own, with all the snitch allegations and everything else like that, with the video being out and so forth. And his lawyer would call me all the time and say, "Oh, that's not right. You need to blah, blah." But ultimately, what it really comes down to is that 99.9% of the fans that support his music really can't even relate to any of this.
Because that song does not strike me as a song that people in the streets are really truly in love with. That's a song that, your sister could listen to, your girlfriend could listen to. It's got a nice melody to it. It's got that weird little sample with that, it just stands out to me as a song where his street cred really doesn't matter. Whereas with 6ix9ine, like anybody who was listening to 6ix9ine and who enjoyed what he was doing early on, we're probably kind of bought in on the idea that, oh, this guy's associated with the Bloods. And when he says that he's tough, it's a real thing. Like he could really get somebody knocked off.
Right. But you could say that Gunna is a gangster rapper.
Oh, for sure. But I'm saying
he's
that
not,
song
he's
doesn't
not
rely
like
on
Chance the Rapper. He's not like, Kanye. Like he's talks about street shit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was affiliated with Young Thug and YSL and the whole aura. I mean, he was like the number 2 guy over there, right? Next to Thug. So you have a gangster rapper who announces to the world that YSL is a gang and I've seen them do criminal activities and come out and have a career.
But the thing about it is that,
and do better than ever.
but that song, Fuck You Mean, there's nothing gangster about that song. It's just a regular ass song. Whereas 6ix9ine disappears for a couple of years and then he comes out and his first song back, he's talking about how he's going to shoot you and how tough he is, etc. Which it's just impossible to square that message with how you actually told in real life. Whereas with Gunna, I mean, granted, the majority of that album is him commenting on his situation with Tellin and everything, but that song itself doesn't really lean on that too much. Whereas 6ix9ine, I always thought, and I mean, look, he's having success with the Latin stuff, which I assume does not really talk about his snitching stuff so much because I don't think that audience really cares about that much. But it's just, I think if you're gonna snitch and you're gonna have your public image altered that much, you kind of have to be willing to switch things up when you do come back and start putting out music again. And I feel like, you know, Gunna did a lot of things right that 6ix9ine didn't, which is like he gave me some introspective content on that album, and that kept me listening to it repeatedly because I wanted to, you know, kind of tune into exactly what he had to say about his situation. Whereas 6ix9ine, you never got any depth out of him.
I mean, 6ix9ine, it's a weird situation because he was talking tough and everything else like that. I mean, you could say that Gunna is a better artist than 6ix9ine. 6ix9ine really just yelled and had like drama.
But that flow was hitting for a while. I don't know why it doesn't hit anymore, but
yeah. No, I mean, listen, it's a funny thing, but yeah, I mean, when you look at, and I remember I even called it. I remember when he came out and he had like, you know, oh look, my video got, you know, tens of millions of views, and I'm like, I went to Spotify and I didn't see it charting at all in the top 50. And I'm like, this is all paid for. So you could have a bunch of, you know, he was like, oh, look, my shit's, I got more views than Utopia, you know, by Travis Scott. And it's like, yeah, but you're paying for a lot of these views. You could make it look however you want to look. You could throw $10 million into YouTube and have crazy amounts of views, but that's not going to organically, if you can't have 10 million views on Spotify and have 1,000 views, 10 million views on YouTube and have 1,000 views on Spotify.
I have heard from people that the amount of fake plays that exist within hip hop on songs on YouTube and stuff is so shocking that if we knew, we would never form an opinion of an artist based on their YouTube views ever again. That it is absolutely absurd. I've had people from labels as well tell me that this is a real thing. I've had people tell me, oh, this song, and it's like one of the number 1 songs in the country. They're like, we got this song off the ground by purchasing millions of streams for this song so that it would look good to the streaming services. And apparently this is like far more common than you would ever think, because I assume you're in the same boat as me where I've never even thought about buying fake plays for an interview or anything. You know?
No, not at all. Well, because it's a losing battle. Like paying for advertising to get views that you're getting paid for by advertising will never work out, right? You'll always end up in the red. So for me, we've never advertised at all. We figure it's going to be organic or it's going to be nothing. So look, it is what it is. But also now you have Kodak Black did a song with Tekashi. Your homie Whack 100 apparently got $1 million check in order to do it. And I guess Kodak got like a Phantom or something, a Rolls Royce.
Yeah,
something. I don't know. Did he get the Rolls Royce plus $1 million, or was it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why he needs another car. For me, I would have just wanted money, but
you know, will Kodak Black's career be affected by this? I don't know. What's your take?
I mean, you see people like Boosie shitting on him, and like Boosie is obviously like the most extreme traditionalist that we have in hip hop, who's always going to be likely to, you know, take the strongest possible stance against snitching. I do think that Kodak played it pretty well. He handled the situation in such a way that he basically got paid $1 million to clown 6ix9ine on the track And then there was a unreleased version of the song that later leaked.
Yeah.
So Kodak's producer or his engineer, who's this one dude that actually hates me due to an unrelated incident, but he filmed the verse. And then when the song gets sent to 6ix9ine, 6ix9ine's engineer ends up chopping it up. Because I remember when I first heard the song, I said to Wack, I said, Kodak's verse is a little short. He goes, yeah. I was like, is that a 16? He's like, no, it's 12. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, why is it a 12? Or like, you know, wait, why would, like, if you're going to pay for somebody for a verse, shouldn't you get 16 bars? And then that made sense. Like, oh, you had to cut out the part where he said something about like, I'm so hot that I got a rat giving me cheese, you know? So that was kind of eye opening. And then even when you like look at how how Kodak has kind of handled it after the fact, I feel like he kind of got to clown him on his own song, and he got paid. And it doesn't feel like the song is a hit by any stretch of the imagination, at least from my perspective. No. The girl who sings on it, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something because I am not with the Latin culture.
Is that Tekashi's girlfriend? Or
yeah, she used to date the Anuel guy.
Yeah.
Who I don't really understand that whole love triangle at all.
I don't either.
It's not for me. But, you know, her shit sucks. Like, it sounds terrible. The 6ix9ine verse really stood out to me. Like, okay, if you're going to get a Kodak Black feature, you should make the best possible song. That you should make this a real demonstration of what you have to offer as an artist. It was so bad, so generic, so boring. To me, that song, more than anything, convinced me that there will never be another 6ix9ine run in hip hop. Because if that's the best that he could do, it's over. You know, I have to think that he could bring in writers, somebody to give him a different flow or help him switch shit up. And maybe he's doing that on the Latin side. But I mean, I don't want to be unfair to 6ix9ine because I just think it's boring for people to just sort of like universally condemn him based on the snitching thing. I would like to be able to like shoot him a little bit more bail in this conversation, but that song sucked. And that song is not going to do anything. That song is not going to make $1 million, like whatever they were planning. And to me, I don't know. If I'm 6ix9ine, I'm kind of looking at Wack like, so you set up this whole collab, but he dissed me, like you know, and that song, and it ended up leaking the diss part of the song and stuff. I don't know. To me, it's like it didn't accomplish anything positive for 6ix9ine in terms of him being able to, you know, fit in hip hop better than he was previously.
Well, I mean, he had a Nicki Minaj feature when he first got out, and that didn't do nothing either.
Yeah, but I felt like that seemed like it had some like legitimate popularity behind it, perhaps for a little bit, like way more than this one.
Well, I mean, the Barbs got behind it and everything else like that, but
it felt like there was some,
and there was a music video. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, a good music video as opposed to this one and stuff. And like, you know, I just felt like there was so much more energy around him at that time, and he kind of squandered it. Like that song would have been the time for him to really like win his way back into some people's hearts. It doesn't feel like they got it in him at this point.
No, I think he's gotten some success with the Latin market, and I think he's going to stick to it. I mean, he's not even really in the U.S. anymore. It seems like whenever I see a video of him, he's overseas somewhere in some Latin American country, whether he's in DR or Puerto Rico or something.
I personally feel that he should go full Ozfest. I think he should get a band, and he should be doing some rock shit, because people forget he came out with like Zillakami and all these guys who are doing a much more like metal rock influenced sound. And then he left that behind as soon as he started to get traction with, you know, the SoundCloud wave. And then he kind of transitioned into doing this much more street thing. But I've always felt like he needs a new genre that is going to be more accepting of him. And like much in the same way that MGK has kind of been adopted by all these, you know, 12-year-old like punk rock girl fans or whatever. I feel like 6ix9ine could kind of pull that off with the rock crowd, but I guess the Latin market probably is bigger and makes more sense for him since he seems like he gets that side of things better.
Yeah. Let's talk about No Jumper for a second.
Okay.
Since our last interview, some of your hosts have left.
Mm-hmm.
AD, that's the only person I'm personally familiar with. I've interviewed him way back in the day.
Right.
Remember when I did the interview with on your platform, we said what's up to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Who else left?
There was this guy T-Rail.
Okay.
And then Lil House Phone left.
Right. So we'll talk about Lil House Phone
Okay.
last. So T-Rail and AD.
And then a couple other guys.
A couple other guys. What led up to this?
Well, the house phone situation kind of led up to it.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the house phone
Okay.
situation. Okay, so I think academics brought this up, and you and I talked about this offline.
Mm-hmm.
House phone had messed around with Lena before you guys were like officially a couple.
Yeah, like I met her and me and her hung out a couple times, and then we didn't talk for like a month or two, and then he ended up running into her at a music festival or some shit like that, and then they ended up hanging out. They slept together, and then a couple months after that, me and her kind of reconnect and end up hanging out and eventually dating. And so, but that didn't really have anything to do with the situation.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Was that ever weird at all that you have this guy who you're employing who slept with your wife at one point?
Honestly, no. Like me and him never talked about it. Me and her talked about it when it first happened, but then we never really like talked about it again after that. Like it was never really, because it's not like me and her were really seeing each other at the time, you know? It was just, we were all just kind of in the same social circle hanging out or whatever. So that was never like a source of stress between me and him or me and her.
Okay, so then what happened leading up to him leaving?
So I go to the porn awards in January, and I end up meeting this random trans girl and doing like a little TikTok interview with her or whatever, this girl, Gracie Jane. And then we talked about the TikTok that I did with her, because in the TikTok she says like, oh, you want to suck my dick? I bet you would love sucking my dick or some shit. And,
and she's trans.
yeah. And we talked about it on the podcast. She left like a comment basically saying like, oh, you should have me on the podcast or whatever. So I have this like comedy podcast with Danny Mullen called Sledge Lords. And so we ended up having her on, and she like very quickly starts throwing house phone under the bus and saying that they had hooked up. Right. And so there was like a little bit of a hint of this because she had left a comment on one of my Instagram posts basically saying like, oh, like your boy house phone likes me, or I ask your boy house phone about me. So I had asked him like, what's that about? And he denied it. So I thought there was nothing to it. Right. And so then we do the interview with her, and she starts trying to throw him under the bus repeatedly. She keeps mentioning the fact that they hooked up or whatever. And I told her, I'm like, I am going to cut this out because this is awkward. You're putting me in a weird position with one of my hosts, yada, yada. Then I talked to house phone on the phone. He's still denying it, but he's also making it clear that he wants me to edit it out. So at that point, I'm starting to kind of put it together in my head of like, oh, okay, so there is some truth to this, right? And so my editor, to be fair, had a very daunting challenge for him because she probably said his name like 30 times throughout the podcast or whatever. And they cut out some of the chunks of her talking about him in general. But then there was a couple other times where she tried to bring him out where they just edited his name out or whatever. And I guess there's like one time in the podcast where they said his name and my editor missed it and didn't get the name because it was kind of in the background while somebody else was talking. And it came out, the fans figured it out very, very quickly. And that quickly put a very, very large strain on he and I's relationship because he felt like he had been exposed and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Lil Durk's still mad at me because we had, he had asked us to take out a part about him having, an upcoming baby. I told my staff to take it out, and my staff members dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
point blank, because I just talked to the PR, and got more details. I mean, but ultimately ends up, you have to take the blame regardless of what happened. Mm-hmm. So I could relate to the situation. But he got angry. Did he throw a drink at you during a live podcast?
Yeah, we reconvened like soon after that situation, and he was still really upset about it. And he was like basically accusing me of having done it intentionally, which is not true. Obviously I told my editor, and I showed him the screenshots of my conversation with the editor where I was telling him like, hey, we can't put this out. You got to edit his name out or clip these parts out or whatever. But yeah, things got a little heated at one point, and he kind of threw a drink at me. And I don't think we've appeared on camera together since then.
Okay. Was it a live taping?
Yeah, it was live.
Okay. So it's not like you could edit it out or anything else like that.
No.
Okay, so did he quit after that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is he still doing stuff online or not really?
Yeah, he has like his own podcast now and stuff.
So how did that spill over into other employees?
Well, I started to be kind of fatigued or annoyed by the whole dynamic I had with the host in general, in particular because I felt like when that situation happened, that I really needed the other hosts to stand by me and to sort of do what they could to help mend this situation, since anybody who was paying attention to the situation could tell that this was not an intentional an intentional offense to him. It's not like something where I was trying to get at him or anything like that. But then I think like what really happened is that like a bunch of the hosts that were on the channel kind of had their own platforms, their own streams that they were doing. And as a result of them, kind of needing to find shit to talk about, I felt like they, or just kind of wanting to stir the pot and kind of, potentially do some damage to No Jumper, that a lot of the hosts were not as supportive as I would have hoped. And so, yeah, that definitely created some tension. And then the thing that actually led to the other host leaving, though, was that I wanted to remove AD from the Tuesday show, the No Jumper show. And I told him that I wanted him to still do his podcast on Wednesdays, and I wanted him to still appear on the news, and he had a food show on the channel and everything, but that I didn't want him to do the Tuesday show with me and T-Rell and this other guy at the time, which was really just a product of the fact that I felt like me and him weren't really getting along on camera anymore. He was doing like 3 streams a week, 4 streams a week outside of that show. And he was kind of like saving topics. Like he wasn't giving his full self when we were on camera. So, and I feel like, he kind of admitted that, and the fans were clearly in on the joke in that regard. So I told him that I wanted to remove him from that show and that I thought it was probably the best thing for our friendship. He was cool with, like, he wasn't stoked on it. I think it kind of hurt his ego, but ultimately, like, he accepted it. And but then there's this other dude who was on the podcast at the time, this guy Lush. And I told Lush what was happening because he was part of the podcast as well. Obviously, I don't expect him to just show up one day and AD's not there. I told him what the plan was, and he, he's like an ex-addict and he really like needs people to confide in. So he basically goes in the No Jumper Discord and ends up spilling the beans about what was going to happen with the podcast to random fans, which was just mind-blowing. Like, you just fucking totally, and he got fired as a result of that, basically. And that was just mind-blowing that, like, oh, I thought that I could trust you, and it turns out that I can't trust you. And not only can I not trust you, but you told the secret that I told you that you really only had to hold on to for like 3 or 4 days. Like, it's not like this all happened within a Saturday. And I told him that, and then he tells this in the Discord, and then that kind of led to things falling out. And so when AD left, he basically took a few of the other hosts with him at that time.
Well, let me offer some takeaways. As someone who's been in business a little longer than you have, this is just simply an experience conversation, not who has the better business or who's the better business mind.
But you went through like a very similar arc at a certain point a few years ago too, which really occurred to me during all of it.
I had all types of shit going on with me and everything else like that, but really it's always been outside of my core business. You know what I'm saying? It's outside of my employees, right? So here's a couple of takeaways in terms of business-wise. Number 1, every employee that works for VladTV signs a non-compete. Meaning that if they want to do a fishing show on the weekends, great. If they want to film skateboard videos, if they want to do an independent film on the side, go for it. But if they want to do a hip-hop show, talking about hip-hop topics, filming for one of our competitors, or doing a podcast that somehow competes with something that we're doing, that's just not allowed. Because our thing is that we want you to put, your full effort into the job that you're doing. You can't work for Google and start a competing search engine. It just doesn't work that way. You know what I'm saying? This is how real corporations work at a high level. I'm not trying to stop anyone's progress or anything else like that, because listen, if you want to learn what you want to learn and then go off and start your own business, that's cool. I'm just not going to be paying you a salary while this is happening. There's that. There's also a base level of, you mentioned, oh, this is, AD's my friend and we want to save our friendship. You kind of have to set up a level of separation between you and your staff. You know what I'm saying? You should be polite and respectful to your staff, but once you start considering them your friends and start, that line gets crossed, it becomes very fuzzy and it becomes unprofessional and things start getting to the conversation that should not. Another thing that I've realized over the years, to me, which didn't make sense conceptually, but I've always saw that employees will always band together with other employees as opposed to, their employer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it doesn't make sense. Like, well, I'm the one paying you. Shouldn't you be more like loyal to me because I'm paying you as opposed to your coworker? But it ultimately doesn't work that way because they work together. They spend more of their time together, and they're going to have more of a bond with their coworkers, which sometimes will mean a bond against you, and sometimes will mean that they band up against you, and so forth. So those are my takeaways in terms of things that you could potentially learn from as your business progresses. You could agree with me or disagree with me, but this is how I see it.
No, I agree for sure. Like I was just way too lax and really didn't like set firm boundaries with the people that were on the channel. So we very quickly ended up with a situation in which people on the channel would come in and be on the news or be on a No Jumper podcast and stir shit up, create beef with the employees, the other hosts, etc. And then they would go home and do their own live streams and basically talk about the internal No Jumper drama.
Yeah.
It was clearly benefiting them more than it was benefiting me. And me telling AD that I didn't want him on the Tuesday show anymore was just like me just like scratching the surface of beginning to like fix what had gone wrong at that point, because it was so obvious to me that this was just not healthy and not something that was going to work in the long run. And to be fair, and my employees who are here right now can let you know, since those guys left the building, we haven't had any internal drama with any of the hosts. It was just like the kind of thing that was very much incentivized by the fact that they had their own streams, their own channels, and that they wanted to make content that was going to get as many views as possible. And when those dudes, like when AD started streaming, that was my idea. I told him you should start streaming. I thought he was going to stream video games or he was going to talk about, stories from his past or something. And then very quickly it became clear that he was going to get the most views from talking about No Jumper stuff and creating drama within the No Jumper world.
Well, I mean, even more so than that, it's like, you talk about guests, right? If you have a full-time employee and you're counting on them to bring guests to their podcast, but they have their own podcast, they're going to get a salary from you regardless. So they're going to double dip and bring the best guests to their own podcast. You see what I'm saying? Because they're incentivized financially to not bring them to you because they're on a set salary with you. This is why I do the non-competes, like I said, because these types of situations will start to occur, which is why if you look at all the VladTV employees, we have like 20 of them, you don't see any of them with podcasts or talking about VladTV or whatever else. They have, fulfilling lives. They do a lot of cool shit, but they're just not doing stuff that's going to ultimately compete with the company or cause problems with the company.
And I was just way too chill about that shit because it was my first time having hosts on the channel that were actually popular in any way. And it just, I just didn't really realize how shit was going to play out as time went by. And, I think also like they kind of started to get the idea, and I blame this mostly on bad management. Like they had other people putting ideas in their heads, but they basically like started to get the idea that they could leave No Jumper and that No Jumper would kind of die off and that their shit would become really successful. Now,
I've been there.
Yeah, you fast forward 4 or 5 months and it becomes pretty fucking clear that they would be making way more money if they had just stuck with No Jumper.
Well, you had mentioned that on one of your podcasts. You said that AD was making like 6 figures working for you.
Well, I mean, he kept going on camera and saying that he was making 6 figures a year. I always wondered, why are you lying? Because that was never really the situation. Like he was, I think at the high point, he was getting paid like $7,000 a month or something, which is good money.
That's almost 6 figures.
Yeah, it's almost 6 figures, but it's not 6 figures. So I always kind of wondered why he was saying that he was getting 6 figures, you know?
But you had made a comment that if you look at the views of what he's doing now, he's not making as much.
No, yeah, because he lost his No Jumper deal, or he left No Jumper and he lost his caffeine deal at the same time, which to me, I saw that and I felt for him.
Caffeine is what?
It's like a streaming service that was paying him pretty good to stream on their platform as well. And yeah, they started their own platform and, they're doing it. But to be fair, I mean, they do like 1-2 hour stream every week, which to me is kind of shocking because my work ethic just would never allow me to do that. Like I need to grind. Like to me, if I do 5 pieces of content in a week, that's a light week, and I'm doing all these crazy interviews and my own consistent podcast and doing the show with Whack and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I think that they just kind of ended up with a different idea of how this was going to work, and it doesn't seem like it's really worked out. Whereas for me, on the other hand, I've been able to get people like Brick Baby and Whack 100 and kind of just build the channel up. Like, we had maybe like 2 months, 3 months that were a little bit low view wise. And then last month we did 50 million views between the Clips channel and the main channel. Like we're doing great. And I mean, I also realized through all this stuff that, I mean, I'm not really like reliant on AdSense. I have a lot of different revenue streams. So if my YouTube money gets cut in half, it doesn't really change shit that much for me. Whereas with these guys, they're trying to create businesses that are almost entirely based around ad revenue. And, I don't think it's going as smoothly as they probably wish that it was. But, lesson learned.
I mean, you see this all the time, man. I mean, with Dame Dash and Jay-Z, Dame always felt that he was the reason why Rockefeller was successful, and then they broke up, and you saw what happened. Yeah. You really see it all the time. I've had ex-employees that would leave and start their own YouTube channels, and 6 months in, they realize it's not as easy as it seems. Mm-hmm. It's people want to feel like they're the reason why something was successful. Everyone wants to feel that way. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the truth will come out after a year or two of the partnership no longer being there. Mm-hmm. Now, some people blow the fuck up. Some people do better on their own. I mean, Jay did better without Dame, if you think about it. Whereas other people, you realize that they should have stayed with that person. Mm-hmm. Suge Knight, another example, right? If Suge Knight stayed with Dre, he'd be a billionaire right now. Mm-hmm. He'd have a piece of Eminem, Kendrick, 50 Cent, Beats by Dre. I mean, whatever the Compton movie, like it will go on and on and on and on. But instead, he was like, I don't need anyone. I'm the one who's, I got Tupac now. I got whoever now. And ultimately, it all fell apart.
A lot of those guys who left, they already know deep down inside that they fucked up. But their egos kind of stop them from acknowledging that publicly. So they have to go onto their streams and act like everything is all good and act like they're doing so good, when they probably all wish that they still had those checks coming in from No Jumper. Myself personally, I wish I had been less of a friend and more of a businessman. I wish that I had approached the situation and been less cool about it. And I wish that the first time, because like AD, it was just like a consistent thing where he was saying, fuck No Jumper, or fuck Adam, fuck the white man. And just, it's like kind of making a joke out of it. But at the same time, when I look back on that, that was like planting the seeds of him starting to get the idea that rebelling against No Jumper was going to be the thing that got the most response or the most comments or the most views or whatever. And I just wish that the first time that he had said fuck No Jumper on camera, even as a joke, that I had said, hey, that's not going to fly. That's not going to work for me. Like I have to set strict boundaries about this. And to be fair, everybody that I have on the team now seems like they get that. Some people just have a hard time, playing their role and playing their position. And I feel like, at a certain point, I heard AD saying that before he came to No Jumper, that rappers didn't want to come on No Jumper. And he really thought that like he was the reason why rappers started fucking with us. Never mind the fact that like, I think I remember that the same week that he started, I interviewed King Von and Jadakiss. And I did
XXXTentacion.
That's what I'm saying. I did like the biggest hip hop interview in terms of views on one single piece of content with that X interview. I think that is the interview with the most views in hip hop history on one piece of content. Now, obviously, you have a lot of interviews where if you were to combine all the clips together, it would be some absurd number. But I mean, yeah, No Jumper was already a business that had 2 or 3 million subscribers before any of those guys came around, and we're still doing great right now. And there's no signs that them leaving left any like real substantial damage to the business or anything. And meanwhile, from my perspective, it seems like they are kind of struggling to build this thing that they all started together. But, I don't wish anything bad upon them. I wish that they had handled shit a little bit better. But ultimately, them leaving was like one of the bigger challenges I've faced in terms of building this business. But I already feel like I've made it past that challenge and that everything's great. So really, it was a very, very important proving grounds for me.
I mean, the thing about running a business, which makes it hard for the CEO sometimes, is that listen, you do have a relationship with every person that works for you in one way or another, depending on how much time you spend with that person. And there's always going to be a lot of special cases and individual situations that come along the way. But what I've always had to do, and it's been hard, to do this, is that when someone comes to you, you have to make a decision that applies to everyone else. You know what I mean? Like you got this, I got this special situation where I got to take off and I know I don't have any more vacation days, but it's like, well, if I let you take off, then everyone is going to be able to come to me with the same request. And I simply can't do that with 20 employees. So I'm going to have to tell you no. Not because I don't think that this is a viable ask, but I then have to change the overall policy of the company. And I have to keep it fair with everyone else. So I've had to tell people no. And ultimately, people have accepted it, but some people didn't. I mean, I had one guy quit. He wanted to take a day off because he had some sort of event he felt it was so important to go to. And I told him, I'm sorry. Like, no one else could cover your day. You have no days off. We've been allowing you up to this point, but now we can't do it anymore. And he's like, well, I quit then. Fuck that shit. And I'm not a slave. Like, of course you're not a slave. Like, what I mean? Like, I don't know why you're publicly phrasing it like this, to try and get people to turn against me somehow, but you quit.
Yeah.
I said you cannot take this day off because of a company-wide policy. And yet you chose that this event was more important than your job, and that's cool. I get it. And to me, that was the end of it,
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's crazy because like some of the stuff that I just said, I said it on Bootleg Kev's podcast a little while back. And I mean, it just turned into AD doing streams where him and his boys are like talking about how they'll beat me up. And it's just like, bro, like this is embarrassing. Like you guys are supposed to be podcasters and you think that this is like the thing that's going to get you ahead in the industry by just acting thugged out on stream. Like I don't know. I was like kind of disappointed right there. And I feel like a lot of the advice that I gave AD along the way, where I was really trying to guide him in the direction of doing better podcasting, like even me bringing topics to the table and saying like, hey, we have this topic, and this topic for this week. He really rejected that and like wanted to just tell stories about hanging out in the neighborhood back in the day or whatever. And like, to me, it was like, no, like, if you want to go far in this game, you're going to have to really add some substance. And like when I read on the No Jumper Reddit of what the reaction is to a lot of his current content, it is the fans giving him the exact same advice that I was trying to give him at that time, which is like, this stuff needs to have better substance. You can't just keep telling stories about some shit that you did when you were 16 or keep telling the same jokes over and over and over. And I like literally this conversation will result in them doing another stream in which they talk about how tough they are. And I just don't think there's a long shelf life in doing streams that are like, where you're cutting wrestling promos and just talking about how hard you are. And you bring in your other homie that we've never seen before and he's talking about how tough he is. And I respond by saying, I'm not scared and I don't care and you're not going to do anything to me. And it just doesn't, I don't know. It's like, I guess I'm just kind of disappointed because I know that those guys could have been a lot better if they actually were willing to listen to me. And now they're kind of like learning these lessons, but it's a harder learning curve because they left and they're not really making the same amount of money that they probably thought that they were. And I don't think that they understand how up and down the lifespan of a content creator can be.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have multiple interviewers on our platform. Sean Prez, my man Cavario, who does, Sean Prez does like a lot of the more of the old, the R&B stuff and the bad boy related stuff, and also some of the more the OG artists. Cavario does all the street stuff. He comes from Don Diva, so he really has a better take on this stuff than I do. My man Coach PR does a lot of sports stuff. Gloria Velez has a new podcast that we launched recently. But none of these people are employees. They're all contractors. And the deal with all of them is, hey, I pay you to do this. We own the content. And at any point, if you guys want to go do something else, there's no strings with us. You know what I'm saying? Like you, if Sean Perez has his own podcast, he interviews some of the same people. Cool, I have no problem with that. You know, I mean, if Gloria wants to take her podcast and go to another platform, great. You know, take whatever new stuff you do. You're welcome to run with it. You know, but when it's an employee relationship, it's very different. And certain people shouldn't be employees; they should be contractors. And when people are contractors, it becomes an easier work relationship than if you're their full-time salary provider, because there is more pressure on both sides because you're essentially supporting their lifestyle. When they're a contractor, there's an understanding that they have other gigs going on, and this is just part of their income.
And if I were to look at your business versus mine, I would say that like one of the main characteristics that make them feel different is that No Jumper feels very, very casual, whereas VladTV is a bit more structured. You know, when I saw you start podcasts with Rico Reckless and Ewall or whatever different stuff that you've tried, you're very involved and you'll like, you know, help them structure the topics and you try to do everything you can to make it as good as possible. Whereas when I gave AD a podcast, I just said, bring your homies on and we'll give you 2 hours to go live and we'll see what happens. And in some sense, that was cool because it did give the fans very much this like feeling of like anything could happen. But also when you take guys that have no podcasting experience and you put them on camera for 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week or whatever it ended up being, they just start to like go in different directions that you might not have expected. So all of a sudden it became like, oh, we're going to take this one filmer and we're going to make jokes about him and give him a hard time every week or whatever. And it just, I don't know, it just started to cause too much tension within the business because a lot of these guys, drama just kind of is what they gravitate towards because they don't necessarily, you know, I know from myself personally that I can talk about current events and topics and get a lot of views from having intelligent, you know, complex conversations about those topics. And a lot of people don't necessarily have that ability, you know, whereas I think that you and I both assume that we can have conversations about current events that'll do very well. So to me, like, I felt like them leaving was rough at the time, but given how much better I think the culture of No Jumper is now, it really stands out to me. I need anyone who's bringing like a drama element to No Jumper. I really just have to jump in front of that before it starts to take hold.
Yep. You interviewed the Island Boys after their the whole French kiss situation.
I had to know. I had to talk to him about that move. Yeah.
And I guess Fly Soldier, one of the guys, came out as gay.
He denied it when I interviewed him, and I'm not really sure how that works because I saw a whole clip of him basically saying that he was a top and he was gay and that you can't hate on gay people, etc. But then when I interviewed him, he kind of denied it. So that was interesting.
Well, I mean, to me, the gross part was him kissing his twin brother. I mean, honestly, that's someone who has twins in his family. That's just yucky to me. Like, it's just really like, if cloud chasing is now incest, like I'm just over it. Like I can't even get my head around that shit.
And
like,
that was what was funny is that the clip of them kissing went viral like the night before Lena's scene with Jason Love dropped. So I'm like kind of like looking
how do we compete against that?
I'm like competing for like who could have the most degenerate behavior. So yeah, but I mean, to be fair, our situation, she sleeps with another man while she's married. That was so shocking to people that people just could not look away. I understood how people felt because when I saw the Island Boys kissing, it consumed my mind because I could not believe, like, I've known a lot of twins throughout my life. I've known a lot of brothers throughout my life. Never did it even cross my mind that they would do gay content for OnlyFans to just make money because
with each other.
Because, okay. And I asked them, I'm like, would you fist your brother? They made it clear that that was a no-no. So I don't know. I'm like, would you jerk him off? They said no. So I guess that's not allowed, but the thing that...
But kissing is allowed?
But kissing is cool. Because, okay, this is the thing is, if you look at the porn world, a lot of these girls are gay for pay. Meaning, they'll do lesbian stuff with other girls, but meanwhile, if they weren't a porn star, they would never hook up with another girl.
Right.
Now, there's also some fair percentage of girls who would be very happy to date a woman or at least, you know, hook up with a woman just to have a good time, even though they probably primarily date men. And, you know, I get that. There's even guys in the porn world who I know do gay stuff and they're not gay, but they can rationalize it in their head or whatever.
Right.
Your twin brother, I mean, that's a lot. that's like, to me, that's just like kind of this one sacred thing that I don't even know any female twins or female sisters that hook up with each other. And I know a bunch of sisters who are in porn, but not that hook up with each other. Like, that's a line that they won't cross.
I mean, but I've seen porn scenes with sisters, actual sisters.
Actual sisters?
Yeah.
Well,
And they
much respect.
Yeah, I mean, look, incest is incest. You can't really just talk your way out of that shit. Like, honestly, you can't just rationalize your way out of it. Who's my brother, so it's okay. No, it actually makes it worse that he's your brother. Like,
and it makes it worse that they're not gay, if they're not gay. Because I know the one said he was gay, so I'm still.
Wait, so one of them gay is not the other gay, but they're kissing each other? What the absolute?
Yeah,
fuck?
like, okay, if they were gay and they're brothers, they're still brothers. But if they were gay, I guess like that doesn't seem as despicable to me. But you not
incest
being
is
gay,
incest. Like, I'm not letting that one slide, man. Like, incest is incest. It's frowned upon for biological reasons, right?
Yeah.
If you get your sister pregnant, you might have a two-headed baby.
Do you think that incest should really be illegal, though?
Yes, I think it should. Yes, I think incest should be illegal, 100%.
I think for adults,
100%.
I don't think that the government should be knocking on your door and stopping you if you want to have sex with your family member. If you're an adult.
You do know what happens what these babies look like, right?
Well, I don't think the Island Boys should have babies together. That's for sure.
I understand that part, but incest is a umbrella term that applies to both sexes,
Right? Yeah.
right? And what I'm saying is that you should not be legally allowed to have kids with your sister or your mom.
But that argument kind of goes out the window when we're talking about two dudes, right? So would you be willing
It
to
does and
accept?
it doesn't, because it's still under the same umbrella. To me, there's biological reasons why this should not happen. There's biological reasons. Nature is telling you don't do this. It's a bad
not the
idea.
hill that I want to die on, but I also don't really
I
think.
will die on this hill. I am anti-incest.
I don't think this is a
Okay?
good
If
use
I
of
am
our government's
bashed
time.
for bullying incestors, then that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Right.
I'm okay. Okay? I'm not bashing gay people. Shout out, I have gay employees. I have gay friends. You know, I've gone out to dinner with gay people, just me and just the gay guy, you know, to talk about business shit. Shout out to Jason from Hollywood Unlocked.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my man. You know what I'm saying? I've had him on the show. I respect him fully.
Great guy.
You know what I'm saying? Great guy. That's my friend who happens to be gay. You know what I'm saying? I have employees who are gay, like who are fully respected all across. I am fully, if you as an adult want to have sex with the same gender, I'm 100% for it. I'm pro-gay marriage. I'm pro-gay rights. You know, if you want to do Pride Week, the gay parade, I'm all for that. When it comes to incest, that's where I draw the line.
But you think our tax dollars should go towards the police stomping out brother on brother relationships?
I don't
That, to me, I don't think that's a good use of the government's time.
Listen, there's lots of stuff that the government wastes money on, and I don't think there's a big incest task force that's out there busting incestors.
Well, that is a good point.
You know
That's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I think these are oddball situations to begin with, right? Like, who wants to have sex with their mother? I don't.
Yeah,
You
it's like
know what I
you
mean?
almost don't need a law against it
You
because
almost-
so few people would want to.
You don't need
Yeah.
a law against it, but clearly the Island Boys are opening up this Pandora's box of what I consider just nasty behavior.
And that's the crazy thing to me is because I interviewed them before they were the Island Boys, when they were just Instagram personalities that were going viral for like arguing with people. And I found them to be so hilarious that I invited them on the show. And then the Island Boys arc ended up happening for them soon after. And I had to go back and change the YouTube title to acknowledge that they were the Island Boys, and then I saw a big spike in views as soon as I changed the title to be about the Island Boys.
Remember, there was the rumor that they were that Epstein was their actual dad. There was that picture with the two kids that kind of looked like them.
And No Jumper never posted that story because I always knew it was fake. But it was kind of like at that moment, I sort of wished that our journalistic standards were a little bit lower because it was such a funny fake news story that I kind of wanted to embrace it. Yeah.
That was completely ridiculous, man. And like I said, if y'all want to bash me for because I'm talking down on incest, that's perfectly fine, man.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's certain things that are biologically, you know, if you have a very high chance of having deformed children, right? Because your DNA is so close to someone else. I don't think that this should be allowed in society. I mean, because this was happening. Because here's the thing, incest was not frowned upon in like the royal families, like in Europe and stuff
Right.
like that. And you had these weird ass dudes with these giant chins, and you know what I'm talking about.
Well, okay, but the thing,
all that inbreeding like was really causing some fucking monsters in these families, man.
right, and definitely we have to stomp that out. But in terms of like, still to this day, a lot of insular religious communities. Now, I'll let the people at home guess what religions we're talking about, but you know, very small communities where they're not really allowed to date outside of their community. They end up committing incest at astounding rates.
Yeah, that's gross.
It's gross.
Yeah.
But it is happening. And I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I don't know to what extent the government is stepping in. Anyway, the point I was making about the Island Boys is just, if they were genuinely gay and genuinely attracted to each other, I would not find it so revolting. But knowing that they're just doing it because it's popular on OnlyFans to some percentage of what I would assume is like a 90% homosexual audience that they've cultivated on their OnlyFans, that is what I guess I just find really gross about it. Even though I am in a situation where my wife just had sex with this big ass guy, and that was also for OnlyFans. But, you know, it wasn't her brother.
Right. If it was her brother, then I would be co-signing this, Adam. I'm sorry. I'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, and I have a sister.
Right.
Never slept with her.
Thank God.
Never even thought about it.
Good.
Really, until right now. Yeah. But I'm gonna aim to never do it. We're gonna aim for never. Yeah.
That's a good aim to have. Aim for never.
Well, one of the guys who works for me is married to my sister as well.
Okay.
You met him last time I came here one time. Remember you showed me the content management system the guy I was with? He's married to my sister. So there's even another reason.
Wow. There's so much cross-pollination going on. No jumper.
Yeah. Well, that's how I met him.
Jason Love's going to be a video editor at one point. Like, it's all going to be crazy.
Imagine him if he's like in his 50s and he's just working for me. Like once the whole porn thing runs its course, he's got a job at No Jumper. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's what it is, man. Adam22. Until next time.
Shout out Vlad. Appreciate you, man.
Peace.
Much love.